Hey, Josh. Everyone, this is Demetrius Gelatis, and I've got with me
Josh Burble.
back from the dead, Josh Burble. I'll tell you. Oh, here we are with the what is it? What podcast do we have again? And we're doing this. We're on the Cue It Up Network podcast channel, and then I'm with MN Pool Bootcamp training pool for people that don't do school good. What was the Zoolander thing? What was
I don't remember.
Okay,
yeah.
Anyway. All right. So I someday I should rehearse the opening. It's getting up. It's like the first rack jitters, man. It's the first rack jitters. How have you been, Josh?
Awesome. Yeah, things have been really great. Yeah.
Good. Well, I'm glad to have you here. For those that haven't been tuning in for a while, Josh was he's been my longtime road partner in pool, and he's kind of gone a little direction. So we're going to get into what he's been up to the last few months since you've heard from him last, which is great. But we've got a good couple topics of conversation today. So I'll give some teasers. Let's see. So here's our lineup, Josh. We've got, I'm going to do a little tip of the week along with explaining what it is that I do for training. Something came up with my student this week I think is interesting. I wanted to take on a listener question about traveling with cues through airports. And then we've got some interesting stuff today to talk about as far as Jason Shaw's 714 and some of the mixed reactions to it, and what are and some of the underlying reasons why people are mixed on this topic that I think is interesting. And then finally, well, we'll get into a little bit about what you've been doing and how what you've been doing is similar to pool in a lot of ways. So I guess not the best teaser, but gosh, man, I'm really dogging it. That's okay. What are we down 2-0? We can come back.
We can come back from here. Yeah.
It's early.
Exactly.
Okay. All right. Deep breath. Let's reset. Anything on your mind you wanted to go? I mean, anything that you want to say to the listeners?
No, not really. I mean, if people remember, I was, a pool player at one point, and I stepped away from pool, and I don't even know if it's been about 6 months down or so, 6-8 months, and I completely had a diamond, and I was traveling with Demi. We were playing some tournaments, and
it was the U.S. Open.
The U.S. Open was the last one we went to, and did a podcast on that and everything. And so I got back from the U.S. Open, and I just decided for my family, for myself, for like my mental health, just my well-being, and like my relationship with pool was great. She was wonderful. It was me. So I had to kind of like step away and sold my diamond table and just decided I wasn't going to play anymore, and figured I'd go back. Didn't sell my cues. I figured I'd go back and play a little bit, hit some balls. And that's what's been happening recently. I came back in the last month or so, and I hit some balls, and it's just been fun. It's been fun to hit balls again. I don't really have any deep desires to compete or anything. But it's been fun to play, and we could talk about that later,
Yeah. No, it's good.
Yeah.
It was good. We got to hit some balls today, and it's a lot of fun, man. It's good to have you back. Even in if it's just scotch doubles in my basement, that's good enough for me, man.
Yeah,
good
and
enough for me.
That's good enough for me right now too. So it was awesome. Like we probably played 2-3 hours of scotch doubles, and it's fantastic. It was really cool. So
all right, well, let's do the listener question first, because this one should be pretty easy. So we'll start easy, and then we'll build. So Josh, someone was asking, I've actually had this come up again and again and again, because a lot of people that come work with me, they fly in to work with me, and for some of these people, they haven't ever flown with their pool cues before.
Mm-hmm.
And so they don't really know they don't really know their options. You can't bring anything 4 ounces of liquid. I mean, how do you get your pool cues to the airport? So for people that are first time looking at going to a tournament, maybe they're going to Vegas for their, they want an APA tournament or something. What should they do, Josh? What's the best way to travel with cues?
What I've done is I go and I find a hard case that I like that'll fit my equipment, because it's got to go in your carry-on. I mean, not your carry-on, but your checked baggage. So I'll get a case. Well, it depends on the order. You could go find the largest suitcase you could find, and then you measure it, and then you buy a hard case that'll fit in there, most likely diagonally. So that's what I had. I put my cue in diagonally in a hard case, and I pack all my clothes around it. And I've flown a half dozen times with cases and cues, and I haven't had any problems. Even the last tournament we went to, I think it was the Open. Well, we drove to that one, but one of the last tournaments we flew to, the Predator case that you have and I have, it's not a technically hard case, like a super rigid case, but I I kind of forgot, like I didn't have a hard case to, like I got rid of my old $40 case or something. And I used that Predator case and it was fine. Like it didn't snap or break or anything. So I think that you can buy a case for $30, $40, some knockoff case that's really rigid. And one of the things I found is that you can open up the lid if it's got one of those flip lids, and you can kind of fold the lid back and gain a couple, 2-3 inches at that diagonal.
Okay, so just in case everyone's not tracking, so because there's a few options. I've seen people do all of the following. I've seen people FedEx their cues separately to where they're going, which I don't think is the right way to play it. If you're traveling one time, you can get away with that, but that's not something you want to do time after time. Another thing is, when my first couple plane trips, I wasn't prepared. So I actually checked my cues as luggage. Like I would just actually check my cue case by itself and just pay $25 to have that shipped and then just do carry on. Like I would just carry on a bag with some clothes in it. And then, if it was like a weekend trip, and just check my cue case.
I was always worried about someone seeing that and grabbing
Sure.
it. So
no, I'm just talking about the options, but the best option is what Josh is talking about, which is you get just to be clear, you get a luggage bag that you put your clothes in, and you make sure it's a big one. Now, you don't want to get like the oversized, ski bags or the golf bags or whatever that are so big, because if you get oversized luggage, then at the airport, they'll like flag that and separate it. And you have to I don't know what shenanigans you have to go through at your baggage claim. You don't want to get something that's monstrous. The right size is it should be something that's like a roller bag, that's a big, big travel bag that, carts around with it, handled it on telescoping handle and wheels, and it should be big enough, like Josh said, to where your cue case, you can put your cues in your cue case, stuff the cue case in that travel bag, and it should be like Josh said, it should be a tight squeeze, kind of diagonally in there. If it doesn't quite fit, like he said, you can undo the end of your the cue case and kind of gain a couple inches. But mine, I've always been able to tuck my cues diagonally in my bag, and it's just small enough to not be oversized, but it's just big enough to fit my cue. And then that way, you don't have to pay extra shipping, and your cue is safe from theft, and it's got extra padding inside. So
yeah, and the only thing different that you and I do is you do a bag, like a duffel bag with roller.
Yeah,
and I do a more of a rigid suitcase.
Gotcha.
It's not rigid on the sides and kind of soft on the front. Those just a standard 3-piece suitcase. I'll buy the biggest one that they have, and then go diagonal in there.
So sure.
I feel like there's a little more rigidness in that than a duffel bag, or
yeah,
I like dragging that around better. So
whatever. Yeah, my luggage is it's a duffel bag. It's not my luggage is not a hard case, but I'll tell you, I mean, realistically though, if I've got a big travel duffel bag stuffed with clothes, and in the middle of it is a cue and a hard case.
Yeah, it's protected. I
mean, I don't know what would have to happen for my cues to be damaged, but now if I had some $80,000, legacy cue, then I would just walk with it everywhere. But I mean, I'm not gonna anyway. Okay, so that's the answer to that. I don't think there's anything more to say. So, and the other thing is, it'll save you money in the long run. You just check one bag each way. You don't have to whatever. So okay,
yep,
good. Well, then I wanted to this has been a recurring theme with me and with students, is that this is the part where I plug my boot camp.
Yes,
boot camp plug. I'm Demetrius. Hello, I'm Demetrius Gelatis with MN Pool Boot Camp. Let's see. I do training for intermediate and advanced players, and I run 3-day sessions. So it's a little non-traditional. Most instructors do lessons. You do hourly lessons. You get together with somebody for a couple hours. They tell you, they give you a few pointers about the cue ball, about your stance, about your stroke. Hey, maybe you should stand a little further back, or you should change your bridge a little bit or something. I don't know. I don't know what most people do, but I do. I assume that my students have already, gotten competent at pool. They've already seen a lot of videos, learned a lot, and I do more of an overhaul for their whole game, where, we look at everything. We look at the whole picture. So instead of just giving them a few pointers and wishing them well, I'm more of a full service. They come stay at my house for 3 days. We take meals together. We spend, 12 plus hours a day together. And I get to know your pool game like it's mine. I compare your pool game to mine, try to understand where the gaps are. There might be gaps in knowledge. There might be gaps in technique. There might be gaps in cue ball. There might be gaps in, patterns. And I'm just going to know your game better than, as well as my own game. And then we're going to highlight those areas that are like, hey, here's the weak links in the chain that are actually stopping you from progressing. We're going to make a real good plan to strengthen those areas and have, and then we're not just going to talk about it. We're going to actually get on the table and do it side by side, hour after hour. So that by the end of the 3rd day, You have new cue ball tools. You have better cue ball. You have better patterns. You have, things, your, stroke is smooth and good timing. Everything's crisping. And then it's just amazing. If you get a little bit better at a few different things in this game, the results could be kind of astounding. So my last student came in, what day is today? Saturday. He came in Wednesday morning. And I can tell you, he was a different player when he left on Friday. So that's my plug. So if you're interested in hearing more, you can check out my website, www.mnpoolbootcamp.com. It's MN stands for Minnesota, mnpoolbootcamp.com. And, then I've also had some people that are worried that they might not be good enough. Don't worry, just reach out to me. I will talk to you, and we can talk over the phone about that. If you're concerned that you're not at a high enough level to train with me, there's a couple options too. One is that I've actually had some students that I've given coaching remotely to help them get up to speed so that they can actually come take my boot camp. And so that's one, I'm interested in anybody that's passionate about pool and wants help. I'm interested in talking to you. And then the other part is that based on the number of people that have reached out to me that are concerned about that, I've even entertained the idea of doing, something different. So if you're concerned about it, like I could maybe even get a few people together to, maybe do a small group of people that are, lower level intermediate or something like that. I'm open-minded. I know. I just want to talk to people and help people with their game. So if you're interested, I'm interested. Okay. So
can I have one thing?
Please do.
Yeah. this will be a little spoiler for what we're going to talk about with me a little bit, but, so Demi's a genius, right? That's my experience with him. I've been friends with him for 15 years. He's brilliant. I feel like he's the best instructor in the country. He's got all the things that he mentioned nailed down, and he's also a witch when it comes to the mental game. And so I was down in Florida and I was in a tournament. So I've transitioned to be playing quite a bit of poker, and I was down there, and Demi and I, in our friendship, we memo back and forth. So he'll send me memos and updates, and he'll record like 20, 30, 40 minutes, and I'll listen to it. So I was down in Florida, and he had left me a memo about his things he was working on in his boot camp and some of the mental stuff he was helping with his students and some of his mental game ideas. This is just kind of our normal process of sharing our lives. And I'm down there and I'm playing poker, and literally that memo about pool transitioned right into what I was dealing with poker. And I was able to sit and listen to that thing for 20, 30 minutes. And it got me super dialed in and squared away and looking at my poker tournament down there in the right way, and got me super, super calm and centered. So I just think that Demi's awesome. And if you have a chance and you have the means and you have the desire to get better, like he is the guy. He's the guy in the US basically, that you want to go talk to and see. And yeah, that's it.
Well, thank you, Josh. And you know what's funny about that? I was going to say that I should get a little jelly from those poker events, but I remembered I got half. I'm in for half for life. Whatever Josh does, I literally beg, borrow, steal. We were talking about something today on the business side, and you had some, no spoilers about that, but you had a business idea in the future that if you ever pursued it would take possibly 6 figures of liquid. Yeah. And I was like, I don't even, like, the number you named was big enough. I don't even have that, but I'm like, I'm in for half. I'll find, like, I will literally, if you told me you're doing that tomorrow, I will find a way. If I have to knock off a 7-Eleven, like, I'll get the money. Don't worry. Yeah. So, okay. So here's what came up with my student this week is that just one little thing about, for a lot of intermediate players, they don't use enough sidespin. Now I've talked about this before, and so I'm not going to start from scratch. I will just say it's been a recurring theme that sidespin is underused. And the reason people can get away with it is that when you play bar table 8-ball, which is a lot of people play bar table 8-ball, you have the ability, first of all, you get to pick your pattern so that you can, I call it the long game and the short game. The short game being like stop shots, soft rolls, soft stuns, times where you're moving your cue ball a couple inches to a couple feet. Then you've got times when you've got to send the cue ball moving up and down table, multiple rails. Well, 8-ball is a game where it's mostly short game. If you play good patterns, you can play, from shot to shot, there shouldn't be a ton of movement. And for that reason, you can use, the short game doesn't require a lot of side spin. So you could play 8-ball, and a lot of the shots don't require side spin. Number one. Number two, you have recovery balls. You could mess up your pattern and just switch balls. And then number three, it's a bar table. So then even if you hink that up a little bit, hey, maybe you could just make a recovery shot because it's not that bad. But when you start playing bar table 9-ball, or you start playing on a big table, or you start playing, 8-ball on a diamond table where you've got, clusters and short side shape and problems to move around, and you're playing better players that don't just give you chance after chance, at some point, you're going to have to develop your full toolbox. And so the side spin is something that a lot of people don't develop and they stay away from, because what happens, they miss a few shots with it and they're just like, oh, I don't like the feeling of not knowing if I'm going to make the ball. So actually, I've got an inspirational story too. I told the guy coming out to my place, he was asking me how to learn side spin. And I told him, he was asking about a bunch of different backhand English pivot systems and all this and that. I just said, miss 1,000 shots. I'm like, just miss I said, I gave him a specific shot and I told him to work on a certain family of shots using different spins and different speeds. It was one shot with different spins and different speeds to reach different places. And I told him to work on that until he missed it 1,000 times. And he just sent me an email. I didn't tell you this. He sent me an email that he achieved his goal. And he said that it was very, very difficult because after missing it a few hundred times, it started to be harder to miss. And he said he was going for 50 misses a day for a month was his goal. And he said that after about a week or two, he was really trying hard to get to 50 misses a day. So he went and he cheated. He went and he got pocket tighteners. So he used a pocket tightener just so he could get to 50 misses. And he said then he wrote me this thing, update by update. He said by 300, it was hard to get 50 misses. By 500, I started seeing opportunities to use this in games more and more and more. At 700, I won a qualifier to a bigger tournament. And he's like, it was my biggest tournament win.
Yeah.
He's like, this guy, by the way, this is a guy that is scheduled to work with me in April. And I haven't even met with the guy yet. Yeah. And I mean, like literally, I feel like, what did I even do for the guy? All I told him to do was work on this one shot with different spins. And all of a sudden he's like playing the best pool of his life. And anyway, he's like, man, I haven't even met you yet, but this is going good. So anyway, he finally got to 1,000 misses and he's like, he's feeling great. I'm like, okay. So that's just another example of how I'll do some coaching with people before they come out to make sure that you're ready for it. But anyway, so that's really inspirational to me. Isn't that inspirational?
Yeah, that's amazing. And it's just, that guy impresses me. I mean, I don't know. I've never heard that story, but that's impressive that he would do that. And that is awesome, man.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's a great result. And it's just, it's sweet.
So then, so what I was going to say about Sidespin, why is it, there's a million things I could say about why it's valuable. I'm going to pick one. I thought about it this way. I'd never thought this thought before, so I wanted to share it with you guys. So if the natural path of the cue ball is a rolling ball with no spin, rolling cue ball with no spin, a follow shot, if you will. That's the natural path. Well, to play position, you have to learn to modify the natural path of the cue ball. And there's only two ways to do that. You can use side spin or you can use backspin. That's it. You can use a combination, right? Mm-hmm. Obviously, but the problem is if you don't use side spin, then that leaves exactly backspin. And there's problems with that. So one problem is backspin is very inconsistent. When you shoot a rolling ball, it always rolls the same. But when you use backspin, it always spins backwards with different amounts. So it's not as consistent. That's number one. Number two, you have to overcome table friction, which means you need to increase your cue speed to overcome the table friction. The third part is it's real tip sensitive. If you're off on your tip, you get, that leads to inconsistency on the backspin amounts. But that means that when you're shooting a shot, you have to be very, very on point with where your tip strikes the cue ball. But then there's one other problem with backspin, which is the amount that the backspin does to change the path of the cue ball depends on your thickness of hit on the object ball. So on a straight in shot, backspin will have total influence. In other words, you can go forward or you can come completely backwards. The backspin is very, very dramatically going to affect the cue ball's path when you're straight. And when you're very full on the ball, similarly, you can really bring the cue ball back a lot. But if you get a super, super thin cut, maybe the object ball's in the middle of the table and you're feather thin cutting it in the side, the thinner you are, the less the backspin changes the path of the cue ball. Because when you're really, really thin and you feather a ball in with speed, the cue ball's hurtling down the tangent line. And whether you have topspin or backspin on that ball, the cue ball is going to hurdle down the tangent line. And it's hard you can influence it slightly, but not as much, and not with any kind of real control. So what that means is the thicker you are, the more the backspin, the more control over your backspin you have. So people that only use backspin to control their cue ball with stops and punch draws and stuns, the problem is they always have to get full angles on balls, because if they get thin, they don't have any control over their cue ball. And so what that means is that people are getting full to 3/4 ball full on all their shots, which is fine if you want to hold your cue ball. But when you need to move your cue ball, now you have to use a lot of cue speed, both to overcome the table friction, but also the object ball is taking all your energy because you're so full on it. So people are getting full angles on balls and having to muscle them in with big cue speeds and below center hits. Now the pockets shrink up and their accuracy on their aim gets worse while the pockets play smaller because the speed. Meanwhile, as far as the cue ball, their tip accuracy gets worse when they're swinging with big speeds at a time when tip accuracy matters, which is they're using backspin. So that leads to, and then if their strike on the cue ball is a little thick or a little thin, it'll dramatically change how far that cue ball moves. So they're using these it's not a good tool to move the cue ball around. In fact, I have a guideline. I tell my students, if you want to hold your cue ball, then you want to be either straight or 3/4 full. If you want your cue ball to move, you generally want to be about a half ball hit. Anything thicker than that, you're going to have to use a lot of cue speed. So in general, it's like, hey, do I need to move? Half ball hit. Do I want to hold? 3/4 full or thicker. And so basically they're getting hold angles when they want to be moving. And these hold angles when you want to be moving result in terrible scatters. And if you have questions about that, you can listen to my last podcast. So it's just not good. But the reason they have to get 3/4 full is because backspin, it doesn't work very well when you're thin in terms of adjusting the cue ball's path. And the second part is the cue speed needed to keep the ball spinning backwards is too great for a thin angle hit, because if you're trying to draw your ball with thin angles, you're having to hit hard to get backspin and the object ball is not taking off your speed, you're going to go flying around. If you're trying to draw your ball around from distance with thin angles, you're going to be flying around the table. So anyway, so the point is side spin doesn't have that problem. Side spin, you can get half ball hit, but then you can hit soft cue speed because it's rolling. You don't have to overcome table friction. And it's not as tip sensitive because the ball is going to roll the same every time. So in general, I like to play a game where I'm getting half ball hit angles using a lot of rolling balls and with side spin and maybe some soft stuns in there, depending. But when I watch players play, most of them stay on the center ball, play to get thick all the time. And then when they need to move their cue ball around, they can play okay as long as they can move short distances and run open balls. But once they need to move their cue ball up and down table, they have no control over how they get on these balls, the angles they get, where they're hitting on rails, and they're rattling balls and hooking themselves and miscuing. And it's just, anyway. And yeah, go ahead.
I'm sorry. That's great. I just would add that even like what Fargo rate are you just talking about there, roughly? Just curious.
I'm talking about people from 450 to 550.
Okay, because I'm thinking about a 640 player that
sure,
I play.
I know here.
Yeah, that it scales up. What Demi's talking about scales up because this guy's a 640 and he can put the cue ball anywhere he wants. He's got a super powerful stroke. But when I play him and I play him 10 ball, I can tell when he is in trouble and I can tell when he's going to miss because he'll get a really flat angle and he'll have to do everything that Demi said. He'll have to load up. He'll have to hit it very firm. He'll have to hit, and he has to hit it. It shrinks the pocket. His tip accuracy is down, everything. And then he's got to pound it really hard. And I know 700s that play that way too.
Yes.
I know another 700 that plays that way. And so what I'm saying is like that was very eye-opening to me to learn from Demi. I don't know how many years ago, but Demi's right on with it. And that is, it scales up. And so it's not just trying to get from 450 to 550 or 600. It's definitely when you're going over the mid 600s and even into the 700s, that's not a winning formula to get 3/4 ball hits and pound everything in.
You watch
or not be caught. Like I think I'm sorry.
No.
The one guy that is the 700ish guy that I know, he plays for those flat angles, and I think it's a leak. because I watch him and I can tell when he's going to miss as well. And the guy that's in the 640 range, I think he's too loose, and he leaves himself those angles, not playing tight enough, like in his preparation to avoid it.
Yeah.
And so I think that it can hurt in both ways. People that are loose get flat, and it screws them. And people that it can even, and then if you're playing for those flat angles, I just don't think it's as effective.
And it's not always going to come out as a rattle. It might come out that your cue ball you're not going to be as accurate with your cue ball movements. And so that's the other place it comes out. And so I was going to just say, if you're all listening to this, next time you have a chance to watch somebody play a set of pool that's not elite, watch how many of their runs end for one of the following two reasons. Well, I'll just one reason. Watch how many of their runs end because they get flat. And generally, by the way, the big brother is also distance. They get long and flat, long and flat, long and flat. People always get long and flat when they need to move the ball. So picture a ball on the side rail, a couple inches off the side rail, and then picture getting long and flat where you're up the table on the kitchen line, long and flat on those balls, and they're trying to force them down and rattling them out of the pocket, trying to force their ball out there.
Yeah.
Like if you and then they miss because the pockets are tight and they're shooting too hard, or they are flat and they're trying to steer the cue ball and create an angle that's not there. And so it's like you watch, there's steering errors, there's stroke errors, there's aiming errors, there's striking errors. And then there's times when they make the ball, but they don't get the shape they need. So it's like you put it all together. You watch the percentage of runs that end because people get long and flat or just playing flat on balls. And you'll understand why I'm raising my voice right now.
And watch for both. They're gonna miss shots because they're pounding the ball and they're just absolutely having to recover, right, with a really powerful shot. So watch for that, but also watch for if they end up making that flat, hard shot, watch how their shape is affected, their position on the next shot, because that is a domino. If they're on the 4-ball and they get flat on the 4-ball, yes, they can pound in the 4-ball and hit some sort of hero shot to get back sort of on the 5. Well, sort of on the 5 doesn't work if you have to be perfect on the 5 to get on the 6. And so it's people maybe won't recognize that it's all stemmed from that flat angle. That's what I'm saying.
100%.
And it's more than just missing the ball. It's the domino effect of what happens when you get flat. We were playing Scotch doubles today. I left Demi flat, and I'm like, I knew like 2 or 3 shots later we were going to be in trouble because it snowballs, man.
Yeah, that's the price you pay sometimes. And but you know what? And I should warn everybody. Now's the part where I just had my second Monster Energy drink.
Monster Energy alert.
Monster Energy alert. Weep. So if you guys notice a subtle shift in my energy level, I'm giving you guys both barrels today. I'm bringing it all. So, okay. And then, but the problem is it's not enough to know not to get flat. People, if your only tool is a hammer, the whole world's a nail. If that's your only tool is knowing how to pound the ball around with below center, then you can't do what I'm talking about doing, which is play for bigger angles and control your cue ball more accurately. To do that, you have to be able to spin the ball and pocket shots. But not just every shot with spin, because there's a lot of shots that are too tough to pocket where using side spin makes them too low percentage. And there's shots that are too tough to control. So my philosophy, I don't mix distance, cue speed, and side spin. I like to use side spin when the shots are easy and I get to use low cue speeds. So this is, I don't want to I'm not trying to do a boot camp here over the podcast, but like in general, I've boiled it down to where I have a family of core shots where I've got 10 shots I use to play pool in general. And those are the ones that have the best cue ball scatters. A lot of them are half ball hits involving side spin that allow you to move your cue ball up and down table, multiple rails, controlling direction and speed of the cue ball. So you can not only get shape, but you can get the right angle on the next ball to keep connecting these shots like a gymnast performing a routine. So that's what I teach is I take people and I make sure they know these shots. Some of them already know all these shots. So for the lower level players I teach, I develop their knowledge, their technique, and help them develop these shots and understand how to use them. And then we build runs with them and they start seeing how they can actually, that's what I did for this guy last week. It's like he transformed his game and he started playing the game I'm describing. Now for players that already know all these shots, that's great. But the problem is they also know a bunch of other shots. And so then what I do for them is I take their whole toolbox, I dump it all out, and I tell them they only get to use those 10 shots. Because some people know too much for their own good and they rely too much on stuff that's not, watch the Europeans. They've got their bridge hand on the rail. They got their bridge hand on the table. They're not on the rail and they've got an angle. and they've got open shots, and they're never jacked up, and they're never flat on balls pounding. How often do you see Alex Kazakis get straight on balls pounding stuff around? And same with Jason Shaw. They've always got an angle. They're always out in space. Okay.
So just real quick, I'm sorry. When you say scatter, everyone knows what you're talking about.
No. So scatter. So what I've got a, with shot making, there's a way to measure how tough a shot is, which is what is your make percentage? Is it 50%, 100%, 90%? What's your make percentage? With cue ball, there's not a good way to measure how good of your, how good your cue ball control is from that position. So what I've come up with is a term I call scatter, which means if you were to set up that shot and shoot 10 times and mark with little dots on the table where you stopped each time, how small of a circle do those dots make? So if you shoot 10 stop shots, your scatter is going to be like an inch, because all your 10 stop shots, your cue ball is going to end up at about the same place. If you shoot a 4-foot draw, sometimes you're going to come back 2 feet. Sometimes you're going to come back 6 feet and leave your partner a really thin cut on the 10 on the side when they're shooting on the hill. That was a great draw stroke, Josh. Anyway, the point is, but then again, I left you flat. I had and that's what happens. It was my fault. That's my fault. You needed to move the ball, and I left you flat. What's that? Yeah. No, anyway, so the point is that different cue ball maneuvers have different scatters, and so I teach which cue ball maneuvers have the tightest scatters. And then I take like my 700 students, my 700 level students, they know all the shots, but they're using all these shots, some of which have worse scatters. And when I show them which shots have better scatters and force them to build patterns around better tools, it's transformative. Yep. Even for high level players, it's totally different.
Yeah. The scatter is like a grouping. So if your grouping is tight, that means that it's way more repeatable. Like the more repeatable it is, the tighter it is. And so rolling a ball with a little bit of English or what Demi's saying, sidespin or even just rolling ball, it's just your grouping is so much tighter than if you're hitting punch shots and draw shots and drag shots and things. And you can't always roll the ball. I mean, sometimes you're going to have to hit those shots, and you need to have them in your toolbox. The poundy kind of draggy, spinny shots that are that style. But in general, if you build your game around more of a rolling angle, you have such better scatter, such better grouping that your game just elevates faster. Yeah.
Cool. So I encourage anybody that's not comfortable on the side of the ball. I challenge you to take the 1,000 miss challenge. 30 days, 1,000 misses. Mm-hmm. But not just random shots. Why don't you email me? info@mnpoolbootcamp.com. If you have questions, I can get you on the right track. And then maybe you too can fly to Minnesota and leave a new player, a new man or woman, a new life.
Yes.
Yeah. Great.
Yep.
All right. Cool. So Jason Shaw ran 714 balls.
Nice.
That's a pretty good run.
Yeah, that's awesome.
That guy's a hell of a player.
Yeah, he's amazing, man. I just love that dude's game. It's so fun to watch him.
Yeah, it's some of the best sessions I've had have come after watching Jason Shaw play.
Yeah.
He strikes the balls so clean that it's a real treat to watch him play pool. That's it.
It's kind of funny to watch him. Like I catch myself like laughing at some of the shots he can shoot, not in a negative way, a positive way, just in a joyful way. Like it's just the guy he's an amazing player, man. He's just amazing.
Yeah. He plays the way, it's like, there's some people that play the way that, you dream about how it would look if you could just be awesome at every part of the game. And then there are times when Jason touches that where it's like he'll turn in a performance where it's just like, I watched the finals at Turning Stone, and he was playing Fedor Gorst at the finals. And Fedor is another player that at times could just play like robot pool. But Shaw was down like, now I don't remember, so don't email me and tell me I'm wrong, but it was like a race. I want to say it was a race to 13 in the finals. And I think he was down like 9-4, and then he wins like 13-11. And it's like when he gets his, and plus in that tournament, he was down 8-4 going to 9, 2 or 3 times.
Yeah.
he was down to some Kuwait guy. I'm sorry, I don't know the guy's name, but he was down 8-4 against Kuwait guy, and he got the 8-5. Then he got a shot and ran out the set.
Yeah.
And he did that against Earl. He was down 8-4 against Earl, and he got a shot and ran out the set. And it was just again and again, it was like even money that for him to run 5 racks and out. And it's like the whole tournament, but it's like the whole set. He's like when he's breaking and getting hooked, or he'll occasionally get a cluster and lose a safety battle. And then all of a sudden he'll get this thing where he's breaking, and it just seems like 2 or 3 balls are going to go in, and then somehow white magic, the cube, so the one ball is going to get kissed by something and get knocked in front of the pocket. It's just like, oh, look at this, and he just open bridges his way to victory lane, and ha ha ha. It's pretty amazing. So I got to watch that, and okay, so anyway, he runs 7-14, and everybody in the pool world unites in their appreciation, unanimous appreciation. Is that the right word? I don't even know. Everybody agreeing is unanimously. Okay. Yeah. Okay. I was thinking anonymously for a minute, but I'm like, why would they be anonymous? There are some people. Yes, there are some people whose names they wish to not reveal that also are applauding his 7-14. No, you'd think that everybody would be stunned and applauding his efforts, but actually it turns out that's not the case. There was a real mixed reaction. Talk about that mixed reaction, Josh.
You know what? I didn't follow it, Demi.
Oh,
I followed it through you telling me about it.
Okay.
I mean, you said that some people were kind of thinking that he was being a diva and like setting it up so that he could knock off the record in front of everybody and post it on social media and weight room walk around. Or is that what you were talking about?
So basically I'm on AZ Billiards a lot, and some days I don't know why. If any of you are on AZ Billiards, please, post on my threads and tell me not to quit, because sometimes I just need a little encouragement, because sometimes it can be a little cesspooly.
Yeah.
But okay, so for some reason I love AZ Billiards. I don't know, but okay. The reaction was very mixed about his run. Half the people reacted the way I did, which is, wow, that's an amazing run. Like, he just broke the world record, and he didn't break it like he broke it in stunning fashion.
Yeah.
And I mean, really stunning fashion. He broke it.
Yeah, he broke it like 4-minute mile. Broke it. Like,
it was pretty transcendent. And so I was excited, man. I was excited. But then half the people were like, really. So what were some of the things that they were saying? They were like, there was something about him setting this table up with, like, I don't know if it was 5 or 5.5 inch. I don't know. But, really, really big pockets, really, really soft, like new cloth, big pockets. They had the little plastic circles, so they didn't even have to rack the balls. They put them on they had like a, kind of like a tap
circle thing.
Yeah, like instead of a tapped rack, it was like everything's frozen to everything perfectly with polished balls. And so between having a literally perfect rack with brand new cloth, when you broke the balls open, there weren't many secondary breaks in straight. Like in straight pool, if you can open up the entire rack on your break shot so that you don't have much for problems left, then it allows you to be really selective about your break ball and about the pattern that you're going to use to get on your break ball, like the key ball and the few balls leading up to it, which means that your average quality of break ball is going to be much better, and you're going to get on that ball at a very high consistency level. So then you're going to have another good break shot that gets into the next rack to have another rack of no problems. When you break and have massive problems where you only get like 3 balls open, or maybe you get 5 balls open, but you have to come with a shot, and then you come with a hard shot where it could be a run ender, but you make that, and now you've got like you don't really have a good break ball to break open the rest of the rack. And now you've got to like chip open some more balls, and you're just trying to survive and get through keep opening up balls to keep your run going. By the time you get through those problems and you open up the rest of the balls, you might be taking really low quality break balls. So you might not make the shot after your break shot. You might not be able to get a secondary break shot. And if you do, you're fighting to get through that rack. And even if you do get through that rack, you're going to get stuck with like some ball on the side where you're not really going into the rack the way you want to. And then that's going to snowball, because now you have another bad break, which is going to lead to more problems in the next rack. So I've played a lot of straight pool, and I can say, if you want to put up good runs, you might be able to struggle through one rack like I just described. But if you want to put up big runs, you've kind of got to get it to where you got a good break ball. You spread most of the rack. If you have any problems left, they're minimal, and you can deal with them pretty routinely and early enough to then have a good selection of break ball to get in the rack after that. Would you agree with that? You play a lot of straight pool.
Yeah, for sure.
So with the locked up frozen rack on new cloth, Jason was able to break the balls and get everything open to where after his break shot, it was like, oh, there's my break ball, let's go. And he's just kind of freewheeling around, running them out. So there's a lot of people that were put off by the soft conditions. And they're a little bit put off by him, turning on a camera and trying and trying and trying. Same thing as John Schmidt did, to be fair, but like they didn't like that either. And there are people that are saying things like, well, when Mosconi ran his 5:26, he didn't, he wasn't like turning on a camera and trying to run 1,000, times to see if he could get a record. Mm-hmm. He was just authentically a champion player that happened to be in an exhibition one time, and people told him to keep going, and that's just what he did because he was Willie Mosconi. And it wasn't a special table, and it wasn't a special ball set, and it wasn't tapped racks, and it wasn't like give me 1,000 tries, and it was just kind of like him being great. Whereas something about saying, oh yeah, Willie Mosconi ran 5:26 or something, watch this, and then to max out your conditions in 100 different ways, turn on a camera and then run it until you finally catch lightning in a bottle. Something about that put people off. And I have some ideas on why, but they felt that was kind of like apples and oranges. Like, well, how do you compare that to what Mosconi did when he's, you know what I mean?
Yeah. I don't know, Demi. I'm not saying, well, I agree with that or I can see it, but it's like, I get it. I get where it comes from. I wonder if, conditions change and numbers change for records as far as like baseball home runs and things. And, or running records. Like I mentioned, different things. It's interesting. I wonder if where this leads to is that someday someone's just going to run 1,500 balls, because they'll just keep doing the same thing on the same type of equipment. Not that they'll go to 6-inch or 7-inch holes and someone will run 10,000 balls, but I don't know. I mean, it seems like for a record like that, conditions, I don't know. It's weird because Schmidt did the same thing where he got a giant pocketed table with new cloth and polished balls every rack and got it broken. So
I think the cue ball is still spinning from John's last shot. It's got so much.
Yeah. It's an interesting question. I don't really have a dog in the race or anything because I don't really spend a lot of time thinking about it. I just on the surface of it, it's really cool that Schmidt did that. It's cool that Shaw did that, and Shaw's record will get broke by someone that does the same thing or similar conditions or whatever. And I just wonder, can they break those records and can you still look back at Willie Mosconi's record and say, well, that was special, and I think you can have both maybe.
So I think the idea goes like this, like suppose that Michael Jordan in his heyday was like, somebody after a big game, somebody is like, hey, Michael, shoot a shot from 3/4 court. And he just walked up, dribbled the ball, launched it 3/4 across the basketball court, and made it from 3/4 of the court away on his first try. And everybody's like, jaws on the floor, like, that's Michael Jordan at his peak. And then some like middle-aged guy was like, has some YouTube channel, and he like sits there every day just heaving the basketball across the court, and he does it from like 2 feet further away and happens to make one, and he just gets it on camera, and he's like, see, I'm better than Michael Jordan. It's like, wait a second. So I think there's a lot of people, it's not just like, some people are like, well, the run isn't as good, but other people are just like, they don't like that if you have to sit there and throw 1,000 basketballs to try to, you know what I mean?
Make that shot. I get you. Yeah, 1,000 attempts.
So I agree with you that like there's room for both. Like I can applaud Willie Mosconi for being Willie Mosconi, and I can applaud for Jason Shaw for being Jason Shaw. And these are like 70 years apart. It's like on totally different equipment. So they're totally different generations, and to compare them is silly to me. But then I think there's just some people that question like the motivation and the attitude behind like, what are you trying to prove or what are you trying to do and why? And some people didn't like, some people had a bad taste about what he was trying to prove and why. And after thinking about it, I came up with a theory as to why people are put off by what Jason did. And I've shared it with you, but now I'm going to share it with them. But them, I mean you. Okay.
The royal you, not me.
Not the Josh you, but the listener you.
The other you.
So I think it is when pool players are trying to make a living, they sometimes, it's not always really, really easy. And so they look for ways to supplement their income. So some players, if the very, very few could make a living playing directly, maybe Shane Shaw or whatever. But like the bottom line is that most players are really on the tournament trail, are really grinding. So some people do lessons. Other people do exhibitions. Other people sell videos. Other people, are sponsored. Maybe they sell their own cue lineup, or some people own a pool hall, or some people, whatever, they have backers, or there's different people with different side hustles and different ways to kind of make it from tournament to tournament. Well, one thing that kind of started happening is with the prominence of social media was that there's a few players that said, hey, you know what? Tell you what we're going to do. I'm going to open myself up and share a little bit about my pool journey with the audience. So I'm going to do posts and share updates about my wins and my losses. And I'm going to maybe share some lessons of things that I'm learning along the way or whatever. And I'm going to give a little back to people that want to follow along and root me on. So there's players that are watching, and all of a sudden the competitors are developing a little bit of a following where maybe they've got 10,000 people that are kind of following along on their posts. And, they get to share in the success, and they get to learn a few things, and they get to kind of pick up some, they get to have a horse in the race that they're rooting for. So, for example, if player X is out there and he's got a following of 10,000 people and he's doing updates and little posts on Facebook and little tidbits or telling funny stories of things that happen. And then all of a sudden, maybe those players chip in on his PayPal, or a little donate here, donate there. Or maybe he's sponsored where he sends people to, some online pool store and he gets a little cut or something, or he gets a little sponsorship money because he has a big following. So that started happening a while back. And that seems reasonable. It seems like a good thing. Like, it's a win-win. The players that are rooting that player on, they get to have a horse in the race, and they get to learn a few things and get some emotional satisfaction, whatever. And the player gets a little help along the way. So nothing wrong with that. But then somewhere along the way with social media, it seemed like it turned into like an attention grab thing where it got more and more competitive, like fighting for people's attention started getting a lot harder. It's when you're the first person on Facebook or YouTube with, it wasn't so hard. People are like, oh, I like pool. What is this guy? This guy's a pool player. Check him out. But over time, and then this exploded with COVID too, because all of a sudden everybody in the world had a camera in their basement. So all of a sudden, everybody was live streaming, like the number of people live streaming matches, or the number of people posting YouTube videos of themselves beating the ghost, or the number of people, setting up trick shots and doing different drills. I mean, it's unbelievable right now. It's like and so that's where it gets weird, is now it's so hard to get people's attention. If you're a pool player and you're trying to get people's attention by making videos, what are you going to do? How are you going to compete with all that content? So what happens is, little by little, it gets a little ridiculous, because pretty soon you've got this thing where it's like people are doing these drills that are like, running 1,000 balls in one pocket.
Drill.
Or like setting up some ridiculous trick shot drill, and then they're running it 1,000 times until they make it once and posting it up there. Like, here's me knocking out this drill.
Yeah, here I just screw my cue together and hit this drill.
Yeah, and it's like this. It turns into like this. I don't know how to say it in a way that I can say it on a podcast, but it turns into this kind of absurd cartoonish reality where everybody's wearing a shiny shirt with, like a Mosconi Cup jersey with their name on it, strutting around on some 7-foot table using a magic rack where they make 3 balls on the break. And then they're running 6 balls on a bar table and posting up their ghost sets like they're Jason Shaw. And it's like, it turns into this landscape where it's like everybody's trying to be, the Superman hero in their narrative. And so in that landscape, it's gotten really cartoonish. Everybody's like what you have to do. So if you're actually playing, like, if you posted up reality where you just got up and played a set against a ghost and lost 5-2 on a fairly tough pocketing table where you're getting clusters after the break and you're struggling to get through the racks, that when you finally get to the 8-ball, you have to test her and you dog it. If you post that set, nobody wants to see that. That's reality. But it's like the standards got so cartoonish. And so I think that a lot of people are put off by that. A lot of people don't like it. And so when they saw Jason Shaw with the cartoonish conditions, with the big pockets and a new cloth on the tap table, they just saw like another guy trying to like gap out the game and put up some big number in a cartoonish setting. And so my point was that there are genuine competitors, and then there are wannabes doing 1,000 takes to make it look like they're a genuine competitor, to fight for people's attention, and that they're two different things. And that I think that the people that are put off by Jason Shaw's approach to this thing mistook him for being a wannabe. And what I would say is, I agree that there are wannabes, and I find that distasteful as well. And I'm not a big fan of our social media culture and what it's doing to pool. However, just because there are some people doing that, Jason Shaw is the actual lion in the forest, and he just is a real thing. And what he did was pretty spectacular. And just because there's a lot of people that are going to duplicate that by playing straight pool on a bar table, on a valley bar table, doesn't mean that he was one of them. That he's just because some people are doing it doesn't mean everybody's doing it. And Jason Shaw is actually the real deal, not a wannabe. And that was my point, is that once you understand that, I don't, anyway, that's my thought. Well, does that make any sense the way I said it?
Yeah, that totally makes sense. Yeah, he's not doing 1,000 takes to try to post his high water mark. He's trying to, he's a real player trying to accomplish a high run, and he's doing kind of what Schmidt did, and it worked out for him. And
he's not trying to be somebody he's not.
Yeah, he's not trying to be somebody he's not. He's a guy that's
actually who he is. He's a guy that runs 714
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yep. And I think what Demi's talking about is, and we had this with our boot camp. I'm part of Demi's boot camp Facebook group, and it was the thing to post videos. Like, hey, let's post our videos.
I wanted to talk about that. So explain this a little bit better.
So within the group,
they don't even know what that is. Tell them what it is.
Yeah. So Demi's students, Demi created a Facebook group for his students. So if you've gone to his camps, you can be part of this Facebook group. And then it's kind of like a continuing education, kind of ask questions, post some things, and just kind of sharing stuff. And then Demi posts a lot of different scenarios that come up, like end game things. Or
well, I want to tell. So my main purpose of this the main purpose of this training group, it's a private training group just for the people that have trained with me. And my goal was, when people leave here, not only do I not want everything that they learned to turn into some dream that fades and they can't remember it all, and it's like they wake up trying to horrified that all these breakthroughs are going to fade away and be forgotten. Like, I don't want that to happen. So I want to make sure I reinforce the ideas of what I taught and do ongoing training so that my students, the same things I do while they're here, I can do ongoing training remotely with cameras and with videos and all these things. So a lot of what I do, there's a lot of things, but the two things I really like to do, I like to do pattern reviews, where it's not just what would you do here and smugly talk about, from the sidelines. Like, no, really, how would you run these balls? And then oftentimes we've all got cameras, so we can actually post, like sometimes my last student, I posted a video of myself playing through a couple of layouts and saying, hey, here's how I want you to run the balls out. Run them out like this. And I demoed myself running them out different ways. So if he can't run them out that way, he can develop certain skills to close the gap on where he needs to. Anyway, so we do pattern reviews and we do video reviews. The video reviews are, my students can, after they've been, back home for 6 months, they can do a set against the ghost, post that, email it to me. I actually edit in my commentary and I do ongoing training with them. So I'll say, hey, here's what we trained on. Here are the areas that I see that you've improved. You did this really well. You did this really well. I see how you use this that we were talking about really well. And I see overall these things are going the right way. Here's a couple spots that we trained on that have gone backwards a step or that aren't working right. And then here's what we could do. And then I'll give them specific stuff to work on and say, why don't you set this run and that run up, your second rack and your fifth rack? I want you to try to run them out this way. Or here's a shot that consistently was being misplayed. Here's a drill that hits that shot. I want you to work on this drill and then come back to me and talk about it. So I'll give them follow-up assignments to work on. And then the best part is that the only people that see these videos are the people in my group. So that if you post that video, not only do I give you ongoing coaching, but you get to see all the videos of me providing that ongoing coaching to other people. So you can see how the same ideas that you're learning and training on are working or not working for other people. And you get to hear it again and again, see it again and again, until finally you start seeing the table and playing the way I do. That's my goal. So that was the purpose. Now there's other stuff that happens, there's mental game, there's other, questions and answers, and there's a community where, in fact, I've got a group of my students that are actually, anyway, it doesn't matter. So it's really cool, but that's what the Facebook group is for.
Yeah. And then the way that it kind of ties into what we were talking about with Shaw and that situation and the two ways of looking at it kind of thing is that, there's kind of a thing with Demi, and it's not unwritten, it's specifically stated, like there should be no cherry picking. And that's what he's trying to avoid, is people going and filming 15, 20, 30, 40 sets and starting over and waiting till they get a set where they can win against whatever ghost level they're playing. Some guys play the 4-ball, 6-ball, 7-ball, 8-ball, whatever, and they cherry pick a set and send in where they win, and that it's like that's not the culture that Demi wants. I don't feel like it's an authentic culture either. So I'm on board with it. Or when I participated in the group, I would do that. I sent in one where I think I lost on the hill of the ghost where I missed the 8-ball that Demi was describing. And there's other sets where I did well, but I would just commit that when I turn on the camera, whatever happened, and that's what I would post. So
here's what I told my students. Most players, they can't look in the mirror, because what happens is, if you've never watched yourself play on camera, I would guess that over half the listeners have never actually seen themselves play a set on camera, although maybe that's changing in today's age. But I will fill you in on how you play. It looks terrible. It looks really, really, really bad. And Josh and I have talked about this and we've laughed about it. Like I've had sets on camera where it's so painful to watch. It's like a black hole in my memory. It's like, I try not to remember it. I'll tell you, if you want to listen, you can go to watch my set with Omar El Shaheen when I played Omar in Derby last 2 years ago. That's pretty bad. The one where I lost to Dan Schneider out at Turning Stone is pretty bad. I'm trying to think. I've got some pretty bad.
There's even been sets where you've won.
And that's what I was going to say. And then there's sets where I've won. So like I took a set off Mika 9-4 at Turning Stone. So you can watch this one too. I was down 2-0. I won 9-4 against Mika at Turning Stone. And I felt great. After that set, I felt like I played a great set. And then when I went back and watched the video, I was like totally cringing. So like for every time you've had somebody like, I played perfect, I didn't miss a ball, it was awesome. It's like, if you actually watched, like it felt awesome because for you, it was a good performance and it was a good outcome. But when I went back and watched it, Mika got hosed. He played really good and just got hosed a few times. And I kind of wobbled through a few things and kind of came with some recovery shots. And somehow when I missed, it was, got away with it. And it's like, somehow I ended up winning that set. And I'm telling you, like, I don't want to be aw shucks. I mean, I played good, but like, I thought that when I went back and watched that video, it was going to be like, this is my moment to show that I played great. And I watched that video. I'm like, I wish they would take this on. I mean, like literally, It was kind of embarrassing. So the point is that when you actually watch, it's pretty bad. Everybody listening to this, like we all play pretty bad pool. So that's it. We don't really, but compared to how you wish it looked, it's not going to look like Shane smoothing around and running 5-patch. It's not going to look like Shaw 7-14. Nothing. It's not going to look like that. But the problem is this. There's a false. It's the same thing with the beauty standards for young girls. So my daughter was in middle school. She's in high school now, but when she was in middle school, like I got to learn a little bit about social media and beauty standards.
Yeah.
And it used to be that it was like, airbrushed models on the front of a magazine. But now it's like they've got software on apps filters where people can take 100 photos of themselves and then filter it to where they look like half cartoon. And then you're supposed to try to look like that. And basically, this has resulted in one of the biggest crises facing our country for people that have kids in middle school is like, especially girls, is like, there's been a ton of self-harm, a ton of increase in hospitalizations due to self-harm, attempted suicide. It's terrible. Eating disorders. I mean, it's so gross that I can't even talk about it right now because I'll get carried away. So the bottom line is I got to see that play out and I'm like, oh my God. And then I look at pool and I'm like, it's the same thing. The beauty standards, I'm going to call it pool beauty standards.
Yeah.
It's like people have this beauty standards where everybody wants to be on camera looking like Jason Shaw or Shane Van Boning. And you don't. And that's not reality. And that's not who you are. And that's not how you look. And so you can do one of two things. You can either accept that or you can play make-believe. And there's a lot of tools that allow you to play make-believe. You could record 1,000 sets against the ghost, find one set where you win 5-0 and you happen to make all your recovery shots and get the right layouts and, bump that ball and get away with it. And then post that up and be like,
that's it. That's how
look at me playing. Yeah. That's my Tuesday. I just snapped off the ghost. That's how I play. But it's like, that's not reality. And so what happened in our Facebook group, my Facebook group, is that nobody, like I'm doing coaching to people that are serious enough about their game to come train with me. And nobody was sending in videos to review. And there's a few different reasons. People talk about time. I don't have the time, or I don't have the technology, but it's like, no, the time, it takes an hour. And if you do that once a year, that's all I need from you. An hour a year, you don't have an hour a year. And even if out of the 50, 60 people in my group, even if half of them are busy, so then the technology is the phone. You got a phone. So in the end, the real answer is this. If you go turn on the camera and record a set against the ghost, you will be embarrassed and ashamed of it if you compare that to the highlight reels that you see on social media. Mm-hmm. What were you going to say, Josh?
I was just going to say, I think a lot of it's almost like, people fear public speaking. Like there's this cliches or little facts that people fear public speaking more than they fear death. Yeah. So it's like, I feel like when you turn on the camera and you film yourself playing pool, to some people, it can be like this very, very, very anxious thing and fearful thing. And so that makes sense that they would want to do it 1,000 times and try to cherry pick. And I get that. So some of that could be that, but it also could be, there's an inertia thing for some of the students, I think, where they can come up with reasons that sound good in their head, but the real reason is they don't want to do it. It's fearful, it's embarrassing. That's the truth. They don't want to be embarrassed and everything like that. So, man, I posted up some stuff on there that I wasn't like super proud of, but I was proud that I posted it. I remember I posted a ghost where I lost to the ghost and I dogged it, and I'm just like, it sucked. But I wanted to push, like, this is when it was first kind of getting going too. I wanted to push that culture where it's like, hey, I'm a high rated player and I definitely can run the ghost over at times, but there's also times where I don't run the ghost over, and there's times when I missed the 8, on the last game.
Yeah, and if we went downstairs, flipped on the camera on my table right now, and you played a race to 5 against the ghost, you might win 5-0, 5-1, but you could lose 5-2 and just completely be hooking yourself and rattling balls. Yeah, and it's like, or just scratching your head, wondering how you could ever win. It's like, that's the truth, and I know because I do this every week against the ghost, and it's the same. So the culture that I'm trying to set in my private training group is, we flip on the camera, we play a set, and that's the set we review. And it hurts because the truth hurts, but it doesn't have to, because you can either be upset that your game does not look like the cartoon that you see everywhere else. It's not going to look like the cartoon you see on social media, and it's not going to look like Jason Shaw, because Jason Shaw is genuinely a world champion, or whatever, at the world champion level, and these cartoons on social media aren't even worth looking at because they're not reality. They're filtered in 100 ways. Yeah. So then but you can either be upset that you don't play as good as a world champion or a cartoon, or you can say to yourself, I'm strong enough to accept my game the way it is, and I can look in the mirror and be okay with it. And I'm okay with my imperfections, and I'm okay with my shortcomings, because you know what? What's actually admirable is that you're strong enough to look in the mirror and accept it, and then take one step to try to do better.
Yeah, you're going to work on it.
And you can get better without being loathing of yourself. Yeah. And it's not like, I can't stand how I look, so I'm going to starve myself. No. It's like, I like the way I look, and I will enjoy as I look better. So let's keep going.
Yeah.
And so that's the culture that I want, is there's no reason to feel bad about how you look, even though it's not as good as you wish it was. Well, that's why we train, and that's why we practice, and that's why this is fun. But I think that the social media culture that's poisoning young girls is horrible. And I see the same thing in the pool world, and I find that very, very distasteful. And I don't like influencers. I don't like social media divas. I don't like people that try to build a following in this way by being cartoonish. I like the genuine people that are either genuine competitors that have a draw based on their exceptionalism, or people that are genuinely down to earth. And I'll give you an example, like Little Chris, he's providing content. He's a very genuine person. And when he does his straight pool runs, he does it live stream, and you get to see him struggle and fail day after day after day. Really cool. And he is not cherry picking. He's genuinely like, this is who I am. This is what I'm doing. And you get to be part of it. Yeah. He is the opposite. And I admire. So it's not that I'm against influencers. I'm not against people having a following. It's the way it's done. And I admire the genuine authenticity. Yep. Versus the people that are like, hitting trick shots and timing shots that took 1,000 tries and acting like this is how I play.
Yeah. so social media came around, I don't know, Facebook maybe 8-10 years ago. And I just remember when I got on Facebook, I got immediately, I'm trying to catch the right angle and kind of, have something look like, it's hard to, I'll give you an example of what I just saw, ironically. Someone that's on social media, Facebook, that I saw a post, like literally I was waiting for you to start the podcast, and I looked on the guy had a picture of his, he had a picture, and in the picture, he had about 50% of a Rolex.
Oh, just conveniently.
Just conveniently plays.
Convenient. Rolex is convenient.
Convenient, exactly. And I looked at it and I'm just like, mother effer. I go, you. And so I like literally zoomed in so I could see that it was a rollie. And I'm like, this mother effer just dropped his rollie on the just conveniently, just half the rollie, and just showed it. And I'm just like, man. So 8 years ago, I caught myself doing that. And I was like, I looked at myself in the mirror and I'm like, that's not who you are. That is not who you are. So I started, and I wanted to do stuff on Facebook. So I write, I don't know if any of you guys are friends with me on Facebook. I like to write like humorous little things about my family and my experience. And I like to humor write. And so I just decided I want to do creative humor writing on Facebook and use that as my platform. But I want to be authentic. Like I want to talk about the shit show that it is raising 3 kids and being married and the ups and downs and all the things that go on with it, the good and the bad and the ugly. And I want to share all of it, not just the good stuff. And I don't want to have like an embroidered, Demi always says an embroidered pillow version with a, don't you say that embroidered pillow?
Like the people that have like the little trite sayings on embroidered pillows.
Yeah. So that's what I didn't want to present that to the world. And that's, so I have a big distaste for that when I see it, and I see it very, very regularly. So it was just ironic that I saw the guy's Rolex today, and
that's very funny.
Yeah, so
that's exactly what we're talking about. So and if that was you, if somebody's listening, that's like, then we're very sorry. And we actually, where can we get that watch? And never mind, don't even answer because I can't afford it because I'm not you. Okay, so anyway, so then the point is going back to the Jason Shaw thing. So with that in mind, I think that there's a lot of people that also feel the way we feel, and so then they think that Jason Shaw is being inauthentic. They mistake that. And so now with that lens, we can say, no, he's not up there being inauthentic. He's authentically a 714 runner.
He is a gorilla in a gorilla suit, Demi.
The gorilla in the gorilla suit loose at the mall.
That's
you know what the other one I heard? And these are like, I think I saw these on AZ Billiards, the funny picture thread. These are, I'm sure they're universal memes. Was to get 4 pigs and you paint numbers on their backs. Number 1, number 2, number 3, and number 5. And you turn them loose in the mall, and then you sit back and watch the security guards try to find number 4. I don't know. Anyway, okay, sorry. The gorilla suit has always been my favorite. So thanks, Josh.
Yeah.
Okay. Social media. So that's it. So to everybody listening, don't fall for that stuff. If you enjoy it, for people that enjoy it, you can. I get a lot of posts on, AZ Billiards. People are like, oh yeah, I recognize it for what it is, and that stuff doesn't influence me, and I just see it for what it is, and I know the truth, and I just play well. Like I've had a lot of people dismiss this, but you can't dismiss trends, and you can't dismiss what's happened in middle schools, and you can't dismiss. You can't just be like, I understand that's not how my friends. It's like, no, that's not how it works. And the fact is that I've got 60 genuine competitors that have come trained with me that are being affected by this stuff. So don't tell me that it's not an issue. So if you're listening, look in the mirror, record a set of pool at random. Don't restart it 5 times. Don't get mulligans. Just record a set and watch how you play. And then under pressure, that's the best part about
the best part.
This training pressure. Group. Yeah, my guys that do this, they say when they post these sets for the training group, they say that they felt more nervous than they've ever been in their entire life.
Exactly.
And here it is, a private training group where like literally we're all supportive.
Everybody's supportive.
They're like playing for fun on your own table.
Everybody on.
And it's like, but meanwhile, it's like they've never, and that's such great practice.
It's awesome.
It's like you get so much, you're getting professional coaching and great practice under pressure. But if you have you're
getting professional simulation. Like
that's it.
That is professional simulation. That's how, that's awesome.
So they're getting so much, but the fact is that don't let it stop you. Just be who you are, be the player you are. Don't compete with attention grabbers, cherry picking sets. So okay.
Yep.
Next podcast, 1 monster limit. 1.
Yeah, that's right.
Sorry. Okay, so that ties in to the next topic, which is our main topic. which is the sadistic genie.
Sadistic genie.
So I wrote a post on AZ Billiards called the sadistic genie. And it was basically like this. Suppose a genie, suppose you found a genie and you wanted to wish for an awesome Jason Shaw pool game. And the genie was kind of had a sadistic streak or a mean streak. And he said, hey, I'll make you a deal. I will grant your wish that you will play stunning, amazing pool, better than you ever thought you could play. Half the time. And the other half the time, it's going to be horrible and you're going to fall apart and play terrible and just dog it. And it'll be like the most painful experience of your life. Would you take that? Would you take amazing half the time, terrible half the time? And if you knew that with that would come amazing wins and amazing high water marks and tremendous performances, would you be willing to take the good with the bad? And that was my hypothetical, because my case that I went on to make is that is pool. And that when you play pool, nobody plays good all the time. Nobody plays their best all the time. And so trying to become a player that banishes the bad part of your performance range is futile. It's impossible. It's unrealistic. And it leads to not only a lot of misery, but I think it stunts your performances and your progress. So that's my argument that I'm prepared to make here. Mm-hmm. But I'll let you start. What you read the post and you've heard me talk about this. When I talked about that, what were your thoughts?
Well, when you just said it there, I thought, well, that is pool, and so it takes a while to get there to realize that, but because it's not fun, man. It's not fun to go through the 50% or whatever it is, because the 50 feels like 80 or 90%. Yeah. And it feels like I never, people can feel, I felt this way before, but for sure. I feel like I never win. I feel like I always lose and never play good. And that's not true. It's like, yeah, I think that if you can kind of, you've talked to me, Demi, about contentment. Like that's been a huge thing. That's been a big change for me over the last 90 days. And I think that post was all about finding contentment with your game, finding contentment with the low end of your range and finding, joy in the high end of your range and finding joy overall with just playing. So that's what I think. I just think, how do you get there? How do you maintain contentment and still strive to get better? That's probably the question.
Yeah, and we've talked about that with the narrative. So anybody that's listening can go back and find the narrative podcast, which ties into this. But what I saw was, before we talk about what we should do, let me talk about some of the traps and some of the myths. If I were to talk about a common narrative and trap that people fall into, it's this idea that, man, it's the consistency myth. So I've talked about it lightly before, but it's been years, and I just want to make sure everyone's clear. People have this idea that when they play their best, man, do they really play good? And when it comes together, and sometimes they can make those long banks, they just know that they're going to make the bank and they can feel it. And then when their stroke is going right where they're looking and everything's clean and they're striking the balls well and they're feeling good, they're not nervous. And they're not only are they not nervous, they're digging deep and overcoming and doing whatever it takes to win. They just really feel good. And when they feel that way and they're playing that way, they play amazing pool. But the problem is, a lot of the days that just doesn't work and they're just struggling and their stroke isn't going where they're looking and they don't feel great and they feel nervous and snake bit and tentative and they don't rise to the occasion and get it done. In fact, they have routine situations and find ways to fumble them under key spots, and they feel like something's doomed and there's something about to go wrong, and how come it feels like this when I really want it, and all this stuff. And so the problem in their mind is, I have this in me where I play great a lot of the time, but for some reason it just doesn't happen all the time. And this other guy shows up that just doesn't play very good. And if I could just get rid of that guy, then I'd be this great player that I know I really am. So the problem is I'm inconsistent and I've got this dog part of me that I need to get rid of. And then they come up with theories on how they're going to get rid of that dog part of the player. So Josh, what is their theory? How are they gonna achieve consistency?
Demi, the fundamentals, my friend.
Yes. They're gonna stroke into a Coke bottle and go to a blank clinic where they get, step on duct tape for 3 days and, shoot 1,000 stop shots a day until their fundamentals are like a machine. They're going to figure out, and if that doesn't work, then it's something else. But the problem is consistency, and the way to fix consistency is with fundamentals, or the way to fix consistency is with hours on the table, and the way to fix consistency is with ABC. They come up with all these different plans that are going to fix the consistency, because ultimately, if we zoom out, you can almost say it like this: they enjoy the game when they're playing well, and they don't enjoy the game when they're playing poorly. And the reason is because their goal is to be a player that always plays well. And so when they're playing well, that's that narrative is working, or that they think they're on that path. And then when they're not playing well, they're like, oh no, everything's wrong. I have not yet become the guy that always plays well. Something's horribly wrong. It's not working. I'm not where I want to be. And so their goal is to banish the gobbledygook part of their range. And so every time they play, they're afraid. They're always afraid that that's going to happen, because that means that they haven't achieved their goal of banishing that guy yet. And they're always concocting a strategy and how they're going to banish that guy. And then they work on their strategy, and then they have some good performances and they think it's working. And then that gobbledygook guy shows up again and like, darn it, it still hasn't worked. And so then they try fundamentals, they try hours, they try lessons, they try practice, they try all these different things. And it never gets better. They never banish that guy. And so then some people quit and they say, well, I just didn't have the talent, or I just didn't have the time. But the problem is that it can't be done. So let's do some myth. So that's the narrative. And that's what leads to a lot of frustration. So the truth about consistency is this: it doesn't exist. Mike Page from Fargo Rate Billiards, owner, or the creator, one of the creators of Fargo Rate, was so check out this video. If you search Fargo Rate consistency, you might have to scroll down, but it's like a 3-minute video talking about the myth of consistency. And what it shows is that every player has the exact same bell curve of performance range. So if you're a 500 Fargo Rate player, some days you might play 575, some days you might play 425. But that you're going to have a 75 point plus or minus on your average. This player thinks that the issue is consistency, because they think that they play 575 pool, and if they could just do that more often, be more consistent. But really, that's not how it works, because you know what happens is that 575 gets better, then their best day looks like a 600, but their worst day looks like a 450. And then if they get better, then their best day looks like a 650, and their worst day looks like a 500. So they can get better and they can increase their overall performance range, but it never gets more consistent. In fact, Shane and all these guys that are 825, they have the same range of performance. They go from 900 to 750. It's the exact same range of performance. And Mike Page does a really good analysis showing that. So have you seen that video, or if you just—
I haven't, but you've talked about it. I'm aware of it. Yeah, that range. Yeah.
Yeah. So then there are things you can do. You can get more consistent at certain shots. You can get more consistent at certain positional plays. You can get more consistent at specific sub techniques. And that'll lift your performance range, but your range will always be what? Go ahead, Josh.
So let me just ask you, Demi, when you talk about this, I hear what you're saying. And so maybe the listeners here too.
Thank you. Steer me a little bit here.
Yeah, I'm just trying to ask
a big topic.
It's a big topic. So I'm trying to ask a question. What is the value in knowing of that range? Because I see the value in it, and I could see it has something to do with contentment and acceptance. It went and maybe that— I'm sorry, sorry. No, I found maybe Stephanie touched on call. But my question is, what's the value? Like, I get it. I hear you.
Yeah. So I'll answer that. I just want to be really clear that let's talk about I just want to make sure that we're clear on what the reality is. So the reality is there is no consistency, and so if you're let's just pretend
consistently inconsistent, that's what it is.
So
that's the consistency.
Suppose you're a 600 player that some days plays 675, but there are some days you play 525. And you're like, man, the days I'm playing 650, 675 feel really, really good. Those days feel really good. They want to feel really, really good all the time. But here's the funny part is if they got better and better and better and better to where they became a 750 Fargo rate player, well, I'll just use me. I'm like 730 something right now. I am a player that consistently plays at a 650 level or higher because on my bad days, I play 650.
Mhm.
So therefore, that's one way. That's the only way to achieve consistent performance at the 650 level is to get to
Is to get-
730 plus.
Exactly. Yes.
But then the funny part is there are days I play 800 level for short bursts of time. And so for me, now that I'm where I'm at, when I play at the 650 level, I don't feel great the way the 575 player that plays at the same level feels.
Mhm.
Because for me, now I've got a new idea of what my best game is. And when I'm playing 650 level, it's when everything is going wrong and I can't do anything right. And I'm feeling snake bit. You know what I mean? So the point is that you can achieve there's because I got a lot of the reason I want to clarify reality is a lot of people were arguing with me on things. You can get more consistent at certain shots. You can get more consistent at certain techniques. You can improve your performance range and you can consistently perform at a certain level by increasing your entire performance range to the point where the bottom of that range is at that level. But you can't
eliminate the range variation.
You can't eliminate good days and bad days.
Yeah.
And that no matter how high you drive the bottom of your range, it feels terrible. So when Shane plays 740 pool, he's not like, isn't this awesome that I always play 740 pool? He's like, he's miserable.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. I'm sure it's not
Well, we've seen it. Remember when he played Dennis that raced to 120?
Yeah.
You were calling him a choke magnet.
Oh, come on.
You did. He said he looks like a choke magnet. He was
If
finding
Shane
ways
ever heard this, no, obviously
he won't.
he won't. Exactly. He won't. It's the same.
Because he doesn't listen to podcasts.
Exactly. They'll never get back to him. No, I did. Okay, I might have mumbled that out.
No. Listen,
No, I did say
but we're
that.
not. Listen, see, Shane doesn't have anything to apologize.
Yeah,
for
I mean, the guy's
he's literally
he's a
best
he's a
players that's ever
goat.
lived.
Yeah, he's a goat. So
that's the
whatever.
point.
In that situation, he was a choke magnet at the end of that set.
Yeah, and so the fact that we're using him as an example of how everyone's human, it's because we were picking literally the greatest player of all time to show that he's human. So that's a compliment.
Yeah.
I mean, if anybody should be insulted, it's like Dennis should be like, well, why didn't I pick? I've had bad days too. Why didn't he pick on me? So, anyway.
Exactly.
So okay, that's the way I try to save that one. I try to catch.
No, it's totally fine. It's totally fine.
Okay, so anyway, okay, so your question was, how does that understanding help?
Yeah, because
You answer first. I'll let you go for a
no,
while.
I mean, I guess I thought I kind of answered it maybe for myself. I wanted to hear
How does that
your
lead to
opinion too.
contentment?
I think it leads to contentment because it leads to acceptance. And contentment's a weird word, man, because it sounds like, well, I'm not going to work on anything anymore. I'm not going to try to get better. I'm content. I'm just happy where I'm at. But, and maybe you can talk about that, Demi, because you're like, my sensei on it. So, but I think that when you realize that you have a range and your range goes 75 low and 75 high, and that there is no, I'm just always going to figure out a way to do this or do that to get at the top of my range. It's just not possible. So the reality is the only way to get a higher consistent range is to build up your overall skill set and range. So if you go and, if you go from like a 650 to a 700 Fargo, like Demi's already said it, then you go up 50 points in your range, your score, your rating, then your low will come up 50 points. But there is no, once you kind of realize that there is no, I just need to be more consistent, then I feel like you're more in reality. And once you get into reality, then you can relax and be more calm and more free and more flowing and not so strangling something out of your game.
So yeah, look, so specifically there's a bunch of little points here that are not little, they're very, very specifically. How does that help? Well, if you understand that you cannot eliminate bad days and that there's no matter how hard you work and how much better you get, there will always be days when it's not working the way it normally would for you. And you can't eliminate that. As long as you think that you can eliminate that, then you will expect that if you work long and hard, that you will be able to eliminate the bad part of your performance range. Well, then every time you have the bad part of your performance range, it will be frustrating and you will feel betrayed and you will feel misled because you had this deal that if I work long enough and hard enough, this will go away. And then you got shortchanged because that didn't happen for you. So it's a covert contract with yourself. Like who told you that you'd be able to eliminate your bad days with long, hard work? That's a story. That's a narrative that you told you made that up. You know why? Because you wish it was true. You wish that if you work long and hard, you could eliminate bad days. So you told yourself that you could, and then you tried, and then it doesn't work, and then you get mad because that's not how it works. So in general, when your expectations don't match reality, it creates frustration and fear. And that's where the frustration comes from is I thought that I could eliminate this and it hasn't happened for me and wham. And it's like, is that right?
Yeah, I just had a quick question
Yeah.
for you. Is it possible, Demi, that a player, without practicing or doing something or plugging leaks or doing anything, if they could understand this concept, that their overall performance would go up without making any changes?
Because the mental, yes, it will. Because the mental game is a skill that just like if you get better at shot making, your Fargo rate performance will go up. If you understand what I'm talking about, this will lift your performance range. It won't make you, and I'll explain why.
It's not going to lift you to the top of your range at all times. It's not going to make you quote unquote consistent. It's going to lift your overall performance.
Correct.
Range. Put a Fargo rate number on it. I mean, I think that if a person could understand this and really embrace it, I think it could bump, 5, 10, 15 points.
And I'll give a specific example of how in a minute. So this is all overview. So the other part, so I talked about frustration. So the first, there's two different things. One is performance and one is enjoyment. You're talking contentment. Now you're talking performance. Mm-hmm. So I want to answer both. Mm-hmm. So as far as contentment goes, if you are perpetually miserable and frustrated because you feel betrayed by the universe that you're not performing consistently up to the top of your performance range because you thought you could, I'm here to say, hey, if you accept that that's not possible, then when you're playing more, the lower end of your performance range, you don't have to let that get to you as much. You can just be like, yeah, I know half the time I'm a donkey. No big deal. Yeah. So that's one where, from a contentment standpoint, that's one example. The other part is fear. Why would this lead to fear? It's because when people tell themselves that with enough hard work, they can eliminate their inconsistency, then every time they start playing well and performing well, they get very excited because they're like, maybe this is the time when I finally got rid of gobbledygook guy. Mm-hmm. Maybe I think that this stance and this stroke and the way I'm hitting them lately, I really feel like I broke through to where I don't think I'm going to feel that way anymore. And the last 4 times I've played, I've just been so calm and confident and nothing's been going wrong. And I just think the days of being nervous and choking and dogging falls for no reason, I think that's the old me. I think I'm good now. Mm-hmm. And then the problem is it's not true. And deep down, they're terrified that they felt this way before where they thought they got rid of gobbledygook guy and they're trying to convince themselves. It's almost like a guy tentatively testing the ice on a lake. Like, is this going to hold? Like, is this going to really keep going this way? Can I really keep being this guy? And then they're horrified that don't be a dream that fades someday. I want it so bad that I just couldn't. This has to be real. This has to be real. This has to be real. And then they're terrified. And then all of a sudden, they're always terrified when they perform that this might be the day it falls apart because deep down, they know the truth. And then, but when they play bad, it's like, oh man, not this again. And every time it's not only are they playing bad, not only is it painful to play bad, but then this whole crashing and burning and disillusionment of like their dream that so it's not only do they feel betrayed that they thought they could achieve that dream, but they actually thought they had it. They thought they had the winning lotto ticket, and now they're being told it's a fake. And it's like this huge letdown because they thought they won they thought they were
the golden ticket.
They had the golden ticket, So that's where it leads to frustration, and that's where it leads to fear. So then let's talk about how does that frustration and fear impact your actual performance. So right away, even if it doesn't, even if there's no performance advantage or disadvantage of mental game, just by telling everybody listening that if you could accept that there's a performance range, and when you're playing poorly, you can accept and embrace that and say, that doesn't define you. This isn't horrible. Doesn't mean you're on the wrong. These are all the things that people do to make it worse. You can't make it better, but there's a lot of things you can do to make it worse. So when most people are playing poorly, they think this means, I guess there's something fundamentally wrong with me. I must be defective because I haven't figured this out yet. or they think I must be on the wrong road and I'm not training the right things and I'm going the wrong direction and nothing's working. And what, and so it's not just the pain. There's a little bit of pain from playing badly, but there's a lot of pain from the stories we tell ourselves about what this means about us playing badly. And so if you're telling yourself stories about being defective and being on the wrong road and how you're never going to achieve anything great, and that's why everything your dad said about you was right. You know what I mean? It's like this is way worse than just a bad session. We're making this way worse than it needs to be. And the other part is the fear part. With every time you go to the pool hall, if there's a chance that you're hoping that today's the day you play good and break through and the gobbledygook guy's gone forever, but you're secretly terrified that this could be the day you play poorly, in which case you have to go through all that hell and pain, then you're under a lot of pressure, because every time you play, you're not just playing the game of pool, you're playing to try to prove your dad wrong.
Worthiness hustle.
It's a worthiness hustle, and you're playing for your eternal salvation. You're creating so much pressure on the results because you're allowing the results of this session to empower the demons that are screaming at you about how worthless you are, how terrible you are, how defective you are. And so if you say, well, if I play poorly, then I guess I really am a worthless piece. Well, then you're creating a lot of pressure on yourself, and it's hard to play confident, loose, happy pool when you're playing for your personal self-worth.
Yeah.
So without even talking about performance, from a contentment standpoint, if you could accept this model and just say, I will have good days, I will have bad days. I will edge up my skill set so that my best days get better, my worst days get better. But I understand that I will have good days and bad days. And when the bad days come, it will feel like I'm on the wrong path. And it will feel like nothing ever works for me. And it will feel like, how come I haven't figured this out? How come I've been playing? I mean, I feel this way all the time, where it's like, how can I be an instructor and I've been playing pool for 30 years and I can compete in professional tournaments, and then there's days I can't make a ball straight in the pocket? Like, why does that happen still? I mean, what the heck's wrong? And then I'm like, no. So the difference between me and where I was before I understood this years ago is that now when I think, I still have those thoughts, and it still sucks when I miss that 6-ball straight in. But like, when that happens, that's all it is, yeah, okay, that was a bad shot. Okay, that wasn't my best shot. And that's it. And there's no additional encumbrance from any other demons or negative emotions. So it's been incredibly free. So that's the contentment side, is that and if everybody can enjoy their pool game, like if your goal is to enjoy your pool game, then right there, even before I make a case about performance, I would like to think that we could just agree to accept this and embrace this a little bit better, because even if it doesn't improve performance, if it improves your peace of mind and your contentment, then I think that's enough. Exactly. In fact, I think it's paramount.
Yeah. And I think that the performance thing just follows. Like the more I've listened to you talk, and we were talking and I'm thinking about it, I think it's pretty obvious that if you're more relaxed, you're going to perform better. And if you're more like at peace with the outcomes, you're going to perform better. And maybe not everybody knows that, but I think they do. So yeah, so I think that's what we're talking about. Yeah.
We'll talk about the performance. How have you, I've got examples and answers about how that improve your actual performance. But
I think that I have experience going and playing players and spiraling and losing to players that are far underrated to me, and just spiraling for hours and hours and not being able to course correct and pull out of it, and just, it's just abysmal. And, it's because of all the stuff you were talking about. And what I'm saying is, now when I play pool, especially recently, since I've gone through all the contentment kind of practices that I've been working on over the last 3 months, I don't freak out when something bad happens. I don't, and poker taught me a lot about that too. We can talk about, this is like, I don't freak out when something bad happens. I just know that there is a range of outcomes, and that sometimes I miss shots, and that's okay. So then that keeps me in more of a calm, flowing state, and I'm able to be at the more par of my performance range. I don't have those huge dips, Yeah.
So. And so when I'll give a few examples of how this could improve performance. When you're having your bad day where you feel like everything's so bad that you're going to quit and sell your cues, and that it's so hopeless that it doesn't even matter anymore. Don't even mark my games anymore because who cares? I just like it's so bad that like there's nothing left to even play for, because when you're playing to prove that you've become this consistent top player now and that was your time, then when that illusion bursts, it's so painful that you can get into like it doesn't even matter to me anymore. I don't care. But if you don't feel that way about your worst game, if you've embraced your worst game and you've made it part of yourself and you don't have anything to hide and you're actually like, it's not thrilling to play your worst and it never will be, but like, it's not as horrifying. Well, then when you're playing your worst, you can realize that actually you can actually enjoy the game even when you're playing badly, and you can actually improve your performance when you're playing badly. So when you're playing terrible, if you can keep calm and keep trying and keep making good decisions and keep going through the process and saying, yeah, it feels terrible and it feels like why bother try because nothing works anyway. But you know what? I'm going to go ahead and try on the shot anyway. Mm-hmm. And you might still miss a bunch of money balls that day, but what if you missed one less? Mm-hmm. That's improvement.
Yes.
Now that's not the improvement you want. The improvement you want is to have a consistent range where you don't miss money balls, but that's not going to happen. So here's the reality. You're going to have days when you miss money balls and days when you don't. So now you don't get to have days where you never miss the money ball. Do you want the days where you miss the money balls? What if you missed a couple less? What if you dogged it just a little bit less?
Well, that is where it has a direct impact on your overall performance.
That's a direct impact. Because now, and it's not fun to talk about taking your worst game and making it half a ball or a ball better, but it's real. And how many tournaments have we been to where you've seen me play my worst and then manage through a match and keep calm and somehow get a win where I needed it, and then all of a sudden turn it around and catch a gear and make a run? Yeah. It's like half the runs I've made in tournaments have involved navigating through some horrible sets. Yeah. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so that's one that, and I've talked about it with sales coaching where people, I don't even want to go into it. Okay. So improving your worst performance because you're not defeated and negative and because you're not overly frustrated, if you could manage through it.
And I think your average and your higher performances will be higher too, because you feel more flow. Like you're not, if you start playing good, you don't have the doom and gloom guy tapping on your shoulder as much because you can accept if you're going to miss. You're not afraid of missing, or you're not afraid of losing your high range.
When you're playing good, you're not terrified that the illusion is going to burst because you don't have an illusion.
Yeah, exactly.
So I'll be real specific. I'll tell you a funny story. So Josh and I haven't played pool for a few months. And so I've had some sessions in the last few months where I've absolutely played the best pool of my life. Since, Josh and I were so I've had many little breakthroughs, right? Where like at the US Open, when we were warming up for the US Open out in Philadelphia, I was having some breakthroughs. I've had some breakthroughs with the break shot. And I've had some, I've just had some things. I went and trained with Dr. Dave and he showed me some stuff, and something he showed me has really helped me on some certain types of shots that were really causing me pain. And because of those things, when my game comes together, I have seen my game come together, and I've had mental breakthroughs, and I've seen my game come together in ways that it never has before. And I've had some performances that are a lifetime's accomplishment. like now I understand why I put all this time into pool, because that's what I was trying to do. So then Josh is coming over. We haven't played for a while. And I found myself like really nervous. Like I'm hoping that I play my best game so Josh can see what
all the work that you put in.
Like all the work. Yeah, so this is like a really thing. This is like something where I'm like, oh man, I hope that today's the day it all comes together so he can see that. And I'm like, what wouldn't it be terrible if my break fell apart, I just start going off the table? Or wouldn't it be terrible if the old gobbledygook guy shows up and I start, all the stuff that I've had come together just doesn't work and I play terrible? And then he's like, yeah, same old gobbledygook, Demetrius. That's, you thought you were getting better, but whatever, man. And so it's like, I didn't realize this, because here's the funny part about mental game is like, you don't always know why you're nervous. You just feel something's squeezy and you don't know why. So then you got to look at it like, say, how am I feeling? And it's like, well, I'm feeling a little like, I'm feeling anxious. I'm feeling nervous about something. I'm like, what am I nervous about? And I started examining my thoughts and I'm like, I really want to show Josh how good I'm playing. And then I started thinking about, well, why is that the case? Why is that the case? And so then, and I didn't go down the rabbit hole. This was just like this morning. Like, this is just this morning. But like, part of it was like, there are things that are there are strengths and weaknesses in my pool game. And so when I'm at my worst, I can look at those weaknesses and say, well, that's why you're never going to be a player. That's why you're never going to do anything that matters. And so part of me wants to buy into this myth that I can fix all those things and banish them and be Superman. And part of me wants, so if I can show Josh that that's not the case somehow, and then Josh and I have a long friendship and some background. And then there's been, we don't compete against each other, but we always push each other and challenge each other. We're both trying to keep up with each other and all this stuff. And anyway, it gets hard. And I haven't even figured out it verbally. I haven't found ways to articulate why it was that I felt it was important but then as I thought about it, I was able to even without going into articulating it all, I was able to say to myself, you know what? No, I'm good, man. I'm good because I know how good I'm playing. And I know also how good I'm not playing. I understand vividly how good I'm not playing. And I understand how vividly how good I can play. And I don't need Josh, just like I'm capable of not cherry picking sets for my Facebook group when I post a set of pool. If I lay a turd where I lose 7-1 to the ghost, I can post that. And it's okay because whether or not one of the students of my group thinks that I played a horrible set and you're not as good as you think you are, that's fine. I'm not I am as good as I think I am because I don't think that I'm better than that. You know what I mean? So it's as I was able to accept that, I'm like, no, if today's the day that it doesn't come together and it seems to Josh, because I think there's part of it is I've been working really hard. And so that if Josh doesn't see improvement, then maybe I feel like, well, then why have I been working so hard if I haven't gotten better? And if I can't show that I've gotten better, then I guess I haven't really been improving and I'm still just this gobbledygook guy. It's no, I understand that I've been improving and I understand I've been working really hard, but I also understand that it doesn't mean that I can just rain packages at will. And so if today's not the day where all that hard work pays off with an accelerating performance, that's okay. I don't have to think that just because Josh didn't get to see it, that doesn't mean that I'm not making progress, that I'm not on the right road, and that there's something defective about me. And so I was able to let that go and just play pool. And then the funny part is I felt way less pressure because I didn't really care anymore. I just wanted to play and have fun playing pool. And then the funny part is, Josh, I don't know if I played good or terrible today. And it doesn't matter because I had fun playing with you and I played my hardest. And I made some blunders, but I made some amazing shots and I had fun playing. And that's all that matters to me. It's I don't even know how I played. I didn't need to put a Fargo rate on it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So that was my experience. So this is how it improves performance, is that anytime you can get more aligned with reality, it will reduce the number of negative emotions of fear and frustration that you have. And it will allow you to better navigate through difficult situations.
Exactly. Yep.
So
you talked about that with me too, Demi, because I've been calling you because I've been playing a little bit and I'm like, man, I'm playing good.
Yeah,
and you call me, you memo me back and you're like, well, of course you're playing good. You have zero expectations. Every time you go in, you feel really excited that you get to play pool. And you're not playing, I'm not playing under pressure. I'm not playing in tournaments for money or anything. I'm just playing because I enjoy playing and I'm having fun and I'm relaxed and everything. And I don't have the expectations, so it's pretty cool, man. I can see the performance increase by just being more accepting. I went in accepting and not thinking I was going to play terrible, but aware that I could play absolutely terrible because I haven't played in 6 or 8 months. But it's so
helped. In the future, there's some things that we could actually do to talk about this. There's another level to all this that I think is going to be really exciting for people to hear about, but this is just setting the table for that. But I think it's really good. I lost my train of thought. We were saying that acceptance, content. Oh, there was one thing I wanted to mention. You were talking about this idea of contentment and then people being afraid of being content because they're like, well, if I could accept playing bad, well, then I won't be motivated to get better. And so what this actually is there's the ego part of us. And I'm not talking the ego, look at how good I am. I'm saying there's a driving taskmaster voice inside of us that's trying to control and it's trying to believe that we're better than we are. It's trying to believe that we can eliminate the weak parts of our game. It's the one that associates a lot of meaning with short-term performances. It's the one it's the voice of the demons, honestly. And in some weird ways, you can almost look at it like it's the devil. But there's a part of us that really, really, really does not want to be dismissed. Those demons don't want to be ignored. And so and the ego doesn't like to be ignored. So if you say, no, I'm okay, man, I can accept the reality, which is some days I'm a hero, some days I'm the goat or whatever. And I'm just going to have fun playing and trying my best. And I don't care. That the ego part of it doesn't like that. And it wants to feel central and important. And it'll say stuff like this. No, you need me. You need me. You need to, if you don't have me to tell you that you need to be better, then you know what's going to happen. If you're accepting where you're at, then you're not going to want to get better. And then you're always going to be this miserable gobbledygook guy. And if I'm not there to tell you when you hit there's another thing when people hit bad shots where they feel like they have to punish themselves and they have to analyze what went wrong. And they're like, if I'm not here to tell you what went wrong, like, if I'm not here to tell you what to do differently, if I'm not here to tell you that that's not good enough, if I'm not here to tell you that this impossible standard is a standard you need to meet, then you're just going to be terrible forever. And so there's people that there's an ego narrative which goes like this. I'm going to have impossibly high standards, and I'm going to punish myself mercilessly every day for not being at that level. And I'm going to try to control every part of my game from fundamentals to the ball pocketing with aiming systems and with fundamental techniques and with all this stuff. I'm going to control, push, punish, because and never celebrate because it's never good enough because I have impossibly high standards. And it's going to be miserable. But then someday, because I have impossible standards and I'm punishing myself perpetually, someday I'm going to be great, so much better than everybody else. That they have all these suckers that have low standards that are having fun when they play. Someday I'm going to achieve this huge motherload of performance, and then I'm going to be better than everybody, and then I'll see how great I am, and then I'll have this huge happiness payoff in the future, and it'll all be worth it. And that's the narrative. And that narrative, to me, I've been there. When I was a teenager, I was there. And I'm telling everybody that that's a horrible narrative, because all that does is you're miserable day after day after day after day. And if you want to know how you're going to feel in 10 years playing a better game of pool, take the average of your last 50 pool sessions. How did you feel? And that's how you're going to feel in 10 years. That's more realistic. So the fact is, though, that when we test the waters and say, can we just be content with who we are and the reality of how we're going to perform? The ego doesn't like that. And it says, no, you need me to point out your mistakes, and you need me to punish you, and you need me. Otherwise, you're never going to get better. And And you know what comes to mind? Remember A Few Good Men?
Mm-hmm. You need me on that wall. You want me on the wall.
And I want everybody to watch that right now. Go to A Few Good Men, the courtroom scene, and look at Jack Nicholson ranting about how, deep down in places you don't talk about, you want me on that wall. You need me on that wall. The way his face looks when he gives that speech is chilling, because he almost is channeling the devil in some weird way. And it's like, that's the voice. And that when my ego talks to me, it's Jack Nicholson. It is. That's exactly the voice that talks to me. Like, no, you need me to punish. You need me to demand. You need me to drive. You need me to be dissatisfied. If you're happy, then you're never going to get better. You're always going to be gobbledygook. And I've talked about it before, so I'll just reference back and say, no, the truth is that even if being content meant that I never got better, I would choose contentment over improvement. Because why do we even want improvement? It's because we have this idea that if we improve, we'll play better, and that'll lead to contentment. And actually, it's the other way around. Where it's so, but first of all, even if I'd rather have the real thing. I'd rather actually be content than have improvement that I hope leads to content. But then the other part is that if you actually are content, then you can let all that crap go. And when you're not afraid and you're not frustrated, and you're able to just, and you're not pursuing endless drills about stroke shots into a Coke bottle because you're going to try to eliminate gobbledygook guy, which is spending time in the wrong direction, in my opinion, then you can actually just have fun playing and have fun doing things that actually work for your pool game, so that you can have fun getting better and have fun having breakthroughs and have fun accepting the funny bad days that happen along the way. And I think you're going to have more fun and play better and get better faster without all that crap. I don't think that's an effective narrative either for contentment or for process. Okay, I'm out. Go ahead.
I would say that I'll just share with people. Like everything Demi said, man, I struggled with it.
Me too.
I literally thought, like, I think I got around 716, and then whatever was my after that tournament and at the US Open qualifier, Fargo. And I literally thought, if I just get to 750, I'm okay. You know, like that's where I'll be happy. That's where I'll be content. Then my range will be so high that my lower range will be high enough that whatever, or maybe the number was 770 or whatever the number was, Demi. I put a number on it and thought that's what and I would not be happy until I got to that number.
And that would change.
That would change how I feel.
Yeah.
And it's like, what I mean, it's like, now I know I'm a total fish for thinking that. but which is totally fine.
I'm gonna steal a line for Brad Owens. Sometimes you're a fish. You're a little fish, but you're a little hero. You're a combination of both. You're Aquaman.
Exactly.
Okay, that's
yeah.
Brad
You're like
Owens,
the poker vlogger. Yeah, I'm Aquaman. Exactly. So now it's like, man, I'm just saying, like, that's life, man. And so if you're in that spot, and I'm not even saying I'm out of that spot, I'm out of that spot because I don't play.
On your good days, you're out of that spot.
On my good days, I'm out of that spot. I'm more, yeah.
It's so meta.
I'm consistently out of that. I'm more consistently out of that spot. No, but yeah, I just want to just say, hey, man, like it's just, there's no, like, I don't know if there's a number, man. Like that's what I'm saying is it's a trap. So if you're listening and you're a 525 and you think, well, if I just got to 600, then I would be content with my game. I'm saying, as a guy that's over 700 that thought, you know, it doesn't work that way.
And I've turned away students because I had somebody that was calling me. And okay, everybody listening, if you haven't figured it out by now, I'm going to tell you guys a secret. I'll let you know a secret. I had a therapist that told me I was crazy. And he didn't tell me, I'm like, hey man, you crazy. He didn't tell me it like that.
Yeah,
he kind of said it more in a way like, as an adult that is responsible, you kind of have to know some things about yourself. So that you can kind of like, you know, manage through without causing too much destruction in the wake. So anyway, I am not exactly normal. And so whatever I meet people that I think are normal, I always know, like, man, this guy must be a little crazy because I think he's cool as hell. So anyway, I'm not normal. You're not normal. And a lot of my students and a lot of you listening, anybody that I'm starting to think that anybody that devotes a huge amount of time in life to shooting balls in a hole in some ways has some idiosyncrasies anyway. So the point is I've had some people call me that, you know, it's not uncommon for people to struggle with mental illness. You know, you and I have both had our battles, and I had someone to reach out to me that I felt was struggling with certain things, and they weren't doing that well. And they thought that the way that they were going to solve their problems was by getting better at pool, either eliminating gobbledygook guy or achieving a Fargo rate. And we had some good conversations. And basically I was like, look, man, you know, he asked me, like, can you help me achieve this goal? And basically the goal he wanted to achieve was to eliminate gobbledygook guy and play good enough that he would suddenly feel better about himself.
Yeah.
And I basically said, man, I can make you play better. I can help your performance range increase. I can show you some cool stuff, but I can't lead you to an outcome to where you're not going to be tested. You know, I'm going to tell this is what a very meaningful clip of something. I read this book, Buddhism Plain and Simple. And this guy, this farmer, sought an audience with this guru. And he was desperate for help. And so he approaches this guy and he says, hey, can you help me? I need your help. And the guy's like, what can I do for you? So this farmer spends like 2 hours unloading all of his problems on the guy. His wife's nagging, is super critical, and his son's been rebellious and won't help out on the farm. And his donkey is, you know, getting older and can't do the work, and this drought, and he's not going to be able to make the thing through the winter. And he's laying out all these serious problems. And at the end of it, the guru says, you know, that's pretty tough. And then the farmer's basically like, well, what should I do? And the guru's like, man, I don't know what to tell you. Like, you're the farmer. Like, I don't know how to advise you on how to handle your farm. Like, you seem to know this better than I do. And some of those I don't know that you can solve. And this is very tricky. And the farmer's like, well, don't you have any advice? You're a guru. Like, And the guru is like, yeah, but you have to understand, every one of us has 83 problems all the time, 83 problems all throughout our lives. And there's nothing we can do. He says, if you try really, really hard, you can solve one of those 83 problems. But then as soon as you do, another problem will replace it.
Yeah.
And furthermore, the biggest problems we can't solve. Like everybody is going to get old, sick, and die, and so will you. And there's nothing anybody can do to solve that. So like, yeah, sorry. And so the farmer's like, well, I don't understand. What good is it being enlightened? What's the whole point? And the guy's like, oh, he smiled. He says, no, I'm here to help you with your 84th problem. And the farmer's like, what's the 84th problem? He says, so you desire to have no problems.
Yeah.
And that's the 84th problem.
Yeah.
So like literally, I'm here to help with the 84th. Now I just realized I just told a story in which I'm the guru.
Compared yourself to a Buddhist guru.
That's my ego. No, seriously, like in this podcast, what I'm trying to do though is spread that message, which is like, there's just the same thing Josh is saying, is that there is no solution to these problems. So what this guy is, if somebody thinks that a higher performance in pool is going to solve the problem,
more consistent, quote unquote.
Well, yeah, right.
Yeah.
If they think that there is a pool performance where they can eliminate the bad days, where those demonic voices wake up and say that the things your dad told about you when you're a kid are wrong, and you're always going to be a loser, and you're never going to be as good as I am, or whatever. It's like, and my dad didn't say that, by the way. I'm just using it as an example. I love my dad. Thanks, Dad. But like, I'm here to say that that's not it. So the correct answer is to embrace the whole range.
Yes.
And it's all good.
Yeah.
It's all good approach.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. So one last thing. We're okay, right?
I'm good.
Okay.
Yeah.
So the last thing I was going to say is you've been playing some poker lately.
Yeah.
And this ties a lot into poker, because in poker's a game where you always win every hand, right?
Yeah.
If you play really good, like in rounders.
Yeah, it's just like rounders. Well, you can walk in and just the professor folded Jack on 3rd Street. It's just like that. It's just like that. So, no, I mean, the awesome thing about getting a kind of having some space from pool and then playing poker is that it's reality. Like there's a reality with poker where you are losing almost more than you're winning. So I play MTTs and cash,
MTTs,
multi-table tournaments where there's 1,000 players, like
1,000 runners,
1,000 runners, as they say in the European continent. So like in general, if I reg a tournament and I'm against up with 1,000 players, there's like an 80% chance like I'm gonna go bust. And so when you are losing 80% of the time, and I'm talking like I'm a decent poker player, so a lot of times when I go out, I got it in good. Like
you've been waiting for.
I've been waiting for them. It's
you've been moving around, waiting to get a spot where you got some fish on the line. You get it all in good, and the guy makes a terrible call and ends up hitting some cards. If you only win 20%, if you only cash 20%, that means that there are stretches, not of 4 tournaments, but there might be stretches of 15 tournaments where you brick out. And if that happens live, that could be a stretch of like 3 to 6 months of just running bad.
Yes. And the only thing I'm saying, I'm not like, like Phil Hellmuth wasn't for luck, I'd win every time. Yeah. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying that I have a knack and a nose for getting it in good. So in my 80% of losses, they are oftentimes very painful. Like it's painful.
Well, here's another way to look at it. In pool, amateurs are going to slop in more balls than pros. Mm-hmm. Because pros just don't miss very often.
Yeah.
And there's not many times that they shoot a ball with speed and miss the pocket and have it bounce around and slop something in.
Slam it around.
So if you were to watch APA matches from like APA 4s playing 9-ball versus like Josh Filler playing 9-ball, the APAs are going to slop in many, many more balls than Josh Filler. Mm-hmm. But Josh Filler is going to win a lot more often than those APA players. Mm-hmm. Like in poker, if you're a good player, you're going to get sucked out on way more than you suck out on other people.
Yes.
And that means win with the worst hand and get lucky.
Yeah.
But the advantage is, but you're going to be winning more in the long run than those players are. But in the short term, there's like a zombie army of bad players that are behind when they get all the money in, but have chances to eliminate you if they run good.
Yep. And statistically, 80% of the time that's going to happen. And so you just kind of deal with it roughly. And Cash is a little different. It has a little different variance. Cash, I think it's, if you're a good cash player and you're a winning player, you might win 60% of your sessions. So, but there's still 40% of the time you're just getting absolutely your nuts shut off.
Which means that there might be strings of 10 sessions in a row
exactly
that they lose.
Yeah.
And furthermore, they might have losing years.
Yeah, months and years.
I'm not a champion poker player, but I've studied the game a bit. I'm competent, right? I'm at least versed in like a little bit of the game. And one thing, I used to be on 2+2 poker forums, and they talk about how players have no idea what the long term really is playing poker. And so, when online poker players measure in number of thousands of hands, and there's players that play 10,000 hands or 100,000 hands or 1,000,000 hands. And what happens is, to play 1,000 hands of poker, if you're just playing, 10 hours a week and you're playing maybe 2 tables online, it might take you a month to play 1,000 hands, or maybe
not 1,000, but yeah, because it's like,
but it's for somebody to have 20,000 hands put together, if they're playing, like say they're playing 1 or 2 tables and they're playing full ring or something, they're not.
Yeah, full ring is a little different, but yeah.
So if they're playing, let's just say they're playing 2 table full ring or 1 table 6 max. How many? I don't want to get.
That was a complete waste of time. So,
but like the bottom line is that say playing, like they might only play 40, 50 hands an hour per 6 max table. So it's like 20 hours is 1,000 hands. So maybe let's just say they play 10,000 hands in 3 months. They might play for 3 months and play 10,000 hands, and they might feel like, man, for 3 months they've been playing an hour or 2 a day, and they're winning, and they feel like they figured the game out. And they feel like they've been winning for a long time. Like that's a super, super small sample size. Like you need like 100,000 hands. You need 10 times that, which means you need 30 months. You need 2.5 years if that's the rate at which you're playing. So you could have a winning year and actually be a losing poker player. And you could have a losing year and be a winning poker player. And that's my point, is like, for people now, there's the more volume to play. There's people that play 100,000 hands a month. They're 16 tabling and clicking around and stuff. But it's like, the bottom line is that the long term is way, way longer. And then it's funny because we know a guy that just had a winning poker session like last time he played, and it was like high five after the session. And I'm just thinking, like, nobody was like announcing that he's like, oh, he's solved or anything. But my first reaction was like, it's almost like sitting down at a poker table and winning the first hand and being like, I'm going pro. It's like, man, it's like making the 9 on the break and quitting your job. It's this is so far away from, you know what I mean? It's just, it's like, it's so far away that I almost don't even feel like celebrating a win, because it's like, it's just the first step in a really, really long hike up Everest. You know what I mean?
And then the way that ties back to pool is that when you play pool and you understand variance, then you can understand variance within your game. Like everything we just talked about for that long session of discussing it. Once you understand that there is variance in your game and that you have this range, then, like for me with poker, it's helped me to accept it. Like you have to accept that, like what me learning to accept 80% loss rate or a 40% loss rate in cash, like it's helped me to accept that and really understand variance and range. And that helps me with pool, because now when I go play, I don't sit there and think I'm going to win because if I played good and if I play at the top of I should win. It's like, I just realized it doesn't even work that way. And I've talked to Jesse, who is a crusher bar table player, right? Jesse Engel. And he's like, hey man, like he crushes Midwest bar table pool, and he still understands that, races to 3 people win, and he doesn't win every single bar table tournament he plays in. And he he's a guy that I think wins every time he puts his cue together, but it doesn't work that way. He still gets knocked off and loses sets and doesn't win tournaments. But he knows overall that his expected value, his EV, is like high in pool, playing bar table regional pool, so that he knows that over the course of a year, he'll make X thousands of dollars playing bar table pool tournaments. And he'll have somewhere he loses, and he loses to lesser players. And that's just all normal stuff. And so for me, I just, with pool, I got caught in this thing where it's like, I'm working on my game. I'm playing so many hours. I'm working on my game. I'm playing so many hours. Why isn't it working? Is it working yet? Is it working yet? And now I understand.
When's the part where I just play good and win? Yeah.
When's the part when I just play good and win? And why can I win this, but I can't play good this time, and all this stuff. And now I just realized it's just a range of variance within myself and my game. And once I can accept that and just be content with that, then I can play and have an overall lift in my mental game and have more joy in my game and be more accepting of it and have a lot more fun playing. So,
And what I was saying
Yeah.
was cool about playing at your worst and how this improves your performance with poker. A big part of the way, so we talk about win rate, how much are you winning overall, how many bigs per 100 hands. It's like sometimes you're getting really, really good cards and good situations. You've got the aces and the other guy's got the kings and that kind of thing. And sometimes you're making your sets when you connect. And sometimes, you're catching bluffs and you're calling and they don't have it. Other times you're just getting second best hands. Other times they're sucking out on you. Other times, they always have it. And so the point is, poker is not a game where you just run good all the time. So where the profit comes from is you make money when you're running good and you lose money when you're running bad. But if you can lose less money when you're running bad, then your opponents lose when they're running bad. That's a big, big way to increase your bottom line. And so it's like at a business, you have your gross sales and you have your expenses, and everybody wants to increase their sales. Whereas managing your expenses isn't very sexy, but it's just as important because it's not about how much you make. It's about the difference between what you make and what you spend. And so the same thing in poker, so here's what happens is when people are getting good cards, you want to max out your profits. But when it's fun to do that, because when you're getting good cards, you're having fun and you're like, how much can I extract from this guy? And how much can I bet? And what hands am I targeting and all this stuff? So it's fun to be the guy with the good cards, extracting money from your opponents. So therefore, a lot of people are good at playing good cards and profitably. But a lot of people aren't very good at playing bad cards less unprofitably. And so when they get bad cards and they get sucked out on and they get second best hands and their opponents always have it, they tilt and they get frustrated and they feel entitled to getting it back. And they feel like, I'm going to take more speculative flops and I'm going to chase and I'm going to take gambles. And I feel so bad. It doesn't even matter anymore because I'm stuck so bad. So let's just gamble and see if I can catch up and win it back and all this. So people, when they're losing, they're miserable and then they make worse decisions and they spew money. And so if you're a poker player, if you can win money when you're playing good cards, and then when you're getting your bad cards, if you can keep your head, you're going to lose, but you're going to lose less. And you're going to lose, if you can lose less back than your opponents lose when they're playing bad, then when you're losing, you're going to lose a little bit. And then when they're losing, they're going to lose a lot. And at the end of the day, your net profit is going to be higher as a result.
Yeah, that's what I texted you the other day.
You were just talking about a hand.
I texted
hand
you.
review. You had some hand where you I have it on my phone.
Well, I texted you. I said
you were in a total trap where you should have lost like twice as much as you lost.
Well, that too.
They were trying to bust you, honey.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, Phil Hellmuth's reference there. But no, I texted you after that session. I had the cash session. First, I busted the tournament, of course, LOL, the 250 tournament.
And then you lost like 270.
And then I lost like 230 playing cash. Yeah. And I told you, I go, Demi, I just texted you. I'm like, I feel like that was a $400 lost session. Like that's the cards that I had, but I was able to only lose 230.
Stop the bleeding.
And stopped. And I didn't donk off. I didn't, I'm going to pay you. You must have it. I just got to see it. I didn't like none of the stuff that I see people do when they play, where they just melt down and punt money. And so it was miserable. 5 hours of misery I spent like not hitting cards and not catching sets. And, one time I had kings and it all folded to me. Like that's classic poker. Yeah, that's classic poker on a super action live table where people are just like betting and throwing money in the pot. Everybody's barreling at the pot. Pre-flop, there's like a massive pot pre-flop every time, and then I get kings in a
smoke cloud. They disappear.
When I get kings in the big blind, I get the walk, and the guy's like, "Do you want to chop?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I'll chop. Yes, I'm chopping." So what I'm saying is, I texted Demi and I'm like, "Yeah, that was a $400 loser for sure," and I booked a 230 loser. So I'm like, when in
feel
poker,
like you won 100.
Yeah, I feel like I won 170 in poker. When you're up 1,000 and then you lose 500 back, it's called upstuck.
Lane flag.
Like
upstuck.
Yeah, they call it upstuck. So I felt like I was the reverse of upstuck. I felt like I should have lost 400, but I won 230. So I was like, I left the poker situation where I got absolutely coolered out of the tournament, the $250 buy-in tournament, and then I dropped 230 playing cash, and I'm like, yeah, Demi, we dropped 480, but I feel like truly cosmopolitan. I feel fantastic,
I'm like, this is good.
I felt it too because I had half of that. And I feel great about that. Thanks.
No, I know.
I'm
But that's all I'm saying is like it's when you like that's what I've learned from poker. And so what I'm saying is in pool, when I go play pool now, it's no different. Like the other thing that we didn't talk about, your opponent's allowed to play good. Your opponent can have the top of their range day, and that has nothing to do with you and it has nothing to do with your performance. It's like it just, do you know what I'm saying? It's like
there's and we're winding this up, but I'll just say there's things in your control and there's things out of your control. And so in the end, it's out of your control whether today's your good day or bad day. It's out of your control whether things are going well or not. So that's why in poker, I'll never forget, there was a book where the guy said, suppose you had a backer that was willing to put up money for you to play poker, and he knew how good you were, and he says, tell you what, I'm just going to pay you $100 an hour to play poker. No matter win or lose, I'll pay you $100 an hour to play poker. But here's the catch. I'm going to be watching your decisions and watching your cards. And as long as you keep your head, make good decisions that are reasonable, keep your emotions in check, and stick to your game plan and manage yourself well, I'll pay you $100 an hour. But if you get frustrated and start tilting and making loose decisions and abandoning your game plan and letting your emotions run all over you, then you're fired. Pretend that the guy was paying you to make good decisions. And so I read that in the poker book and it was meaningful to me. And it ties right into like your job is the things you can control, which are your processes. And I've talked about this before. I have a coach's corner on my YouTube channel. Check me out at MN Pool Bootcamp on YouTube. Now coming soon to your home theaters near you, whatever. Anyway, the collect all 4 colors. So you're there to do processes. So when you're having a bad day, it's okay if you're playing bad. It's okay if that feels bad. It's okay if that wakes up some negative thoughts about how terrible you are. But then you got to let that go. And you've got to keep doing your job, which is to make good decisions, give your best effort, take your breath, get off the ball if you don't feel good, and give it your best. And then handle it if it doesn't go your way anyway. And so that's your job. And that's it. That's where it ends. And so if the more loosely you can hold the results, the less meaning you can attach to your bad days, and the more you can just enjoy doing your processes. And like Josh said, you can book a loser and still feel good about it. And not just because, I played my best, and if I lose, it's okay. It's like, no, even if you play badly, even if you do make blunders, then that's part of the game too. And it's just do your best that day. And some days your best is your best and it's still not enough. But other days your best looks pretty bad. And that's still okay. Just as long as if you feel like you could have done better, then do your best to do your best. And that's it. And so when you're talking about like, even if you play well, you might still lose, or even, you can't control the other person's good day. I'm like, yes, we could write a book about things you can't control. In fact, everything in the universe you can't control, except for just a couple things: your breathing, your attitude, your effort. So it's like, it's much easier to make a list of things you can control and just try to keep focusing on that, because the list of things you can't control is boundless.
Yeah.
So Cool, man.
Yeah.
Well, that monster, man, it's not all it's cracked up to be, because that's only been 2.5 hours, and I'm ready to take a little cat nap. So no, I hope everyone enjoyed this. I'd love to hear some thoughts from you. So reach out, post, comments. If you email me, if you want, I have windows on the ground floor. So if you want to throw a brick with a note, just reach out, man. I'd love to hear from all of you all at the same time. Okay, I'm good. You good?
Yeah, I'm good, man. It was awesome. It's good to be back with you, and that was really fun. Thanks for having me back, Dan.
Thanks. And thanks everyone for tuning in. We appreciate you, and we'll catch you on another episode of Cue It Up Bootcamp Network Podcast.
Amen.
Amen, comma.